Chapter 11:19. I'm back. Before I update, I'll tell you the reason why I didn't update for 2 days. I was sent to the hospital with a fever and severe bronchitis. Otherwise, I wouldn't have stopped updating like this. In the past, I always resisted going to the hospital whenever I was sick. This time, I couldn't go there directly. Thank you for making everyone wait. After recovering, he began to train his body and improve his constitution. The ancient dream path was destroyed and the patriarch was forced to reverse the path of reincarnation. However, he was powerless against the martial madman. The entire Tao field was buried in time. I was sent to reincarnation by the patriarch and lost myself. The donkey spirit seemed to be talking in a dream. His face was full of sadness and shock. Chu Feng was dumbfounded and his body was trembling. This was simply unacceptable. Gu Chunhai was incomparably shocked and furious at first. Then, he started to shout loudly. Now, he was irritable and anxious. In the end, he had thousands of words in his heart, but nothing came out when he opened his mouth. In the end, he said in a hoarse voice, "I want to cry." The coffin shook. Gu Chunhai was furious. He simply couldn't take it anymore and looked as though he hated the heavens and earth. He had long since known that this donkey spirit was male. Then, he let out a muffled roar and released an indistinct prehistoric language that was difficult for ordinary people to understand. He vented his boundless anger. Even if you had an accident during your reincarnation, it would have been better if you were still a woman. No matter what race you are, there will be a time when you will cultivate into a human body. But now I've waited for thousands of years to see you again, but, Gu Chunhai was greatly agitated. He was boundlessly furious and was simply possessed. On the side, Chu Feng's heart had also turned cold. What was going on? Qin Luoyin had suffered a calamity and was actually like this after reincarnation. The little Taoist's mother had reincarnated into a beast? This caused Chu Feng's body to stiffen. When facing the donkey spirit, his emotions were too complicated. He really didn't know what to say. How should he greet him? It was said that the heavens were heartless and could sometimes be harsh to the point of cruelty. This scene was truly humiliating. Now, it seemed that the will of the heavens was difficult to fathom. Sometimes, the terror of the reincarnation path wasn't just blood and bone. There was an even crueler thing, a murderous heart. During the battle back then, you entered the land of reincarnation and abandoned your future body. You traveled through time and space to return to the world of the living. What a pity, what a pity! The donkey spirit muttered to himself. He was dispirited and incomparably depressed. The anger in Gu Chunhai's heart soared. He thought of Qingshi from prehistoric times. He once had endless fantasies and looked forward to seeing her reincarnated body again, but now he wanted to erase this memory. I'm not afraid of losing face. Don't try to persuade me. I'll cry first, boo-hoo, old Gu cried, extremely broken-hearted, sobbing quietly, incomparably emotional. He cried and cursed at the same time. If it wasn't for the prehistoric passing away, burying everything, how could things end up like this? In addition, he cursed the martial madman, saying that he was tyrannical and cruel, not even sparing the number one beauty in the world. There was no enmity at all, yet he still went to kill. He cried endlessly, full of sorrow, as if he had nothing left to live for. He rolled about in the coffin, shaking this entire region until it rumbled, as if there was an earthquake or tsunami. Chu Feng's mood. There was no need to mention it. He didn't even know how to cry when his child's mother was in such a state, yet this malicious spirit from prehistoric times was one step ahead of him and was wailing endlessly. How could he reason with this? What could he say even if he did? Chu Feng's heart felt as if a bottle of flavors had been knocked over. For a moment, all sorts of feelings, sweet, sour, bitter, spicy, and salty, surged into his heart. Logically speaking, he and Qin Luoyin had come together because of an accident. At first, they didn't experience those unforgettable feelings. They only experienced some things together later on. But after seeing everything in front of him, he still couldn't take it. Was this villainous heavens purposely torturing people? All right, stop crying. It's annoying to hear. Chu Feng slapped the coffin. He couldn't stand this old fellow. Logically speaking, he was the victim and the one who should be sad. In the end, all his tears had been shed by this malicious spirit. What was going on? You control the heavens and earth, and you even want me to cry? This old man is sad. My beauty of the past has fallen to such a state. I can't take it, I just want to cry. Go cry to the side, this is my sigh. Chu Feng really couldn't go on. Reuniting with an old friend was originally a joyous and exciting matter, but now, he wanted nothing more than to smash his head against the ground. It would have been better if they hadn't met. If he didn't know, he wouldn't be so upset. However, Chu Feng couldn't cry. The main reason was that he seemed to have experienced this kind of thing once before. He recalled the old events in the foreign land. At that time, the little Taoist cried and said that everyone had died. He lied until his eyes turned red and couldn't help but shed silent tears. Don't tell me we're going to meet again today? Motherf ****. In just a split second, Chu Feng was no longer sad. He was a bit suspicious and grabbed the donkey spirit with one hand. He placed his hand on his forehead and wanted to take a closer look. What are you trying to do? The donkey spirit hadn't even resisted when old Gu became anxious. He let out an explosive shout and shook the earth and mountains. He rushed over with all his might to protect the donkey spirit. You've grown up a bit. You're already so old, yet you're still learning from others to be jealous. The more Chu Feng spoke, the angrier he became. It was fine if this wasn't Qin Luoyin, but if it really was, what right did this old ghost have to be jealous? He shouted, "You get as far away from me as you can! Little thief, you're too shameless. How dare you covet my beauty? I'll fight it out with you!" Old Gu went all out. The coffin shone with a bloody light and for a moment, his ferocity surged to the heavens. Chu Feng felt his kidneys hurt. What was this? Why was an unrelated ghost like you interfering? How could there be a place for you to meddle? Get lost, old Gu. I'm confirming whether this is Qin Luoyin or not. Don't stop me. Chu Feng pressed his hand on the donkey spirit's forehead and searched his mind. He wanted to get to the bottom of this. For a moment, he was dumbfounded. He saw the ultimate scene of the land of reincarnation and a glowing, immortal figure. Was that Qin Luoyin? No, it was even more perfect than her. It was exquisite and flawless. This was the original appearance of a person after their soul light had been freed. Qingshi, it's really you. This old man's heart aches. Sob, sob, sob. Old Gu also came over. The coffin was pressed against the donkey spirit's head, and he saw the spiritual imprint. Old Gu pointed to the sky and swore, "Heavens above, Qingshi, this old man will definitely find the spirit transformation fruit for you. It can restore your female body and guarantee that fairy Qingshi will reappear in the world." In a split second, the donkey spirit shivered. He couldn't help but turn around and kick the coffin away. Moreover, he shouted, "You should keep the spirit transformation fruit for yourself. I'm fine like this." Bang! Chu Feng slapped the back of the donkey spirit's head. The spiritual imprint he saw earlier quickly faded away. Then, he saw the various scenes inside. He saw the figures of the black yak, yellow cattle, Qin Luoyin, and the others. The donkey spirit let out an odd cry and quickly shook his head. He broke away from Chu Feng and scuttled away. He shouted, "Men and women shouldn't touch each other. What are you trying to do? I'm the former fairy Qingshi, the #1 beauty in the world. How dare you blaspheme me? Old Gu, hurry up and protect me." Damn it, there was indeed something strange. This was like seeing a ghost. Chu Feng was quite angry. Old Gu shook the coffin and said angrily, "Jade, you're going too far. How can I allow you to behave atrociously with me here? Chu Feng wasn't angry after hearing this. On the contrary, he revealed a smile and said, "Old Gu, I see that you're also lonely and forsaken. Forget it, take good care of the world's #1 beauty." "I don't care anymore." He turned around and left. He sat in the distance and didn't even turn his head back. Qingshi. Old Gu was nauseating. He was thinking about where to find the spirit transformation fruit. This thing was too rare and precious. There were only 2 trees in the Yang realm. He didn't know whether they were still there or whether they had been cut down. Old Gu was very emotional and nauseating. He moved the coffin closer to the donkey spirit and dilly-dallied and touched it. In the end, the donkey spirit was annoyed and kicked it away with his hind leg. "I'm warning you, old ghost, I have nothing to do with you. Don't touch me." Old Gu moved forward again and told him about the past. He also explained that he went to steal Qingshi because he fell in love at first sight. However, he also paid the price and was beaten half to death. "Qingshi," Old Gu called out softly. That really gave people goosebumps. His voice was hoarse, and even Chu Feng couldn't help but rub his arms with all his might. "F***ck, this grandpa can't take it anymore. I'll confess, I'm guilty. I admit that I'm not fairy Qingshi. Old Gu, you damned pervert, get lost." In the end, the donkey spirit couldn't take it anymore. He couldn't pretend anymore and quickly admitted it himself. That was because he saw Old Gu's stickiness. The donkey hair all over his body was standing on end, and there were tens of thousands of goosebumps all over his body. If this continued, he reckoned that he would want to run away. "Tell me, who exactly are you?" Chu Feng spoke. He hadn't seen the thing in the depths of the donkey spirit's mind just now, so he couldn't determine which old friend it was. However, with such a shameless nature, he could lock onto 1 or 2 people. As for Old Gu's current state, it was really. Chapter 11:20. "Dade, who are you? Are you my brother Chu?" The donkey spirit ran over eagerly. He had a feeling that this should be Great Demon Chu. After recovering the memories of his past life, he thought of too many things. Then, based on Dade's various performances, his personality, as well as his methods of dealing with martial arts, there was no doubt that it was that person. In fact, he felt that Dade's various actions and speech were exactly the same as Great Demon Chu Feng's in the Netherworld. The only thing that made him feel strange was that this tender youth's face was actually very similar to Chu Feng's past life. He had already reincarnated, so how could this be? This was really strange. For a moment, he suspected that this was a trap and that someone was doing this on purpose. But after thinking about it, he felt that it shouldn't be so. He had only reincarnated as a donkey, so who would target him? "And who are you? Hurry up and confess before I cut you up." The corners of Chu Feng's mouth twitched as he ground his teeth. That was because the donkey spirit was too hateful. He was making fun of him. Of course, Old Gu's mood was even worse than his. He was dumbfounded and sat in the coffin without moving. He was a bit numb. What was going on? For a moment, he couldn't accept it. Where was Fairy Qingshi? Why did she fly away? Who was this? Motherf ***, he wanted to kill someone. After Old Gu woke up, he began to move the coffin towards the donkey spirit. He wanted to fight to the death with this donkey. He had to settle the score. This was intolerable. The donkey spirit was a step ahead and said, "Old Gu, stay on the side. If you dare to stick to me again, I'll fight you to the death. I'll fight you to the death." Old Gu roared angrily. He was about to go mad. Today, he had experienced great joy, great sorrow, and great disappointment. His entire mentality was about to collapse. "Dade Chu Feng, save me! Old Gu has gone mad. I'm really not Fairy Qingshi." The donkey spirit cried out miserably. Chu Feng hurriedly moved and forcibly separated them. "Stupid donkey, shut up. I naturally know you're not her. I'm punishing you. Old Gu, You are angry out of humiliation. Where is your previous clinginess? The donkey spirit shouted. Ping ling ping lang. This place was in chaos. If the donkey spirit had not shouted out Chu Feng's name several times, Gu Chunhai would not have given up. At this moment, his mind was spinning endlessly in the coffin. He felt a little confused, but in the end, he had more or less figured it out. Suddenly, he had encountered 2 reincarnators. This kind of thing was really unreasonable. How many reincarnators were there in the entire Yang realm? Sometimes, one might not even meet one in dozens of lifetimes. Today, he actually met 2 at once. This could be considered a miracle. Especially Jidade, that bastard. Didn't he encounter a reincarnation hunter? To be able to avoid detection and get through safely what was going on. Old Gu felt that his brain wasn't enough to process it. The main reason was that he was so angry today that he couldn't stand it anymore. The donkey spirit was well behaved and drooped his head. After being beaten up by Chu Feng, he was now grimacing in pain. Chu Feng was already convinced that this was an old friend, a reincarnator. After the donkey broke through the reincarnation barrier in his heart and recalled his past life, he clearly sensed the aura of reincarnation. That was an indescribable energy nourishing the donkey spirit's body. Others couldn't feel it, but Chu Feng could. Back when he had faced the young lady protected by Dongqing, he had felt this because he was a reincarnator of the flesh. This was like a unique talent of this life. Brother, it's me, the Siberian tiger, the Manchurian tiger, your brother tiger. The donkey spirit laughed there. After he cracked open his mouth, he actually had a dignified and valiant appearance. Of course, no matter how his temperament changed, he was still a donkey. Chu Feng felt his kidney hurt again. He knew that this was either the old donkey Lu Feiyang, the Manchurian tiger, or the toad. These 3 couldn't escape. Moreover, among the suspects, Chu Feng felt that Lu Feiyang and the Manchurian tiger were more like the Manchurian tiger. The former was greedy for life and afraid of death, while the latter had no moral integrity. Back then, during the battle under Kunlun, the Manchurian tiger was called the Siberian tiger and stood on the side of the Western Allied army. In the end, when he saw that the situation wasn't right, he immediately betrayed them. He called himself the Manchurian tiger and belonged to the Eastern camp. He followed the Western Schiller, the Black Dragon, and the others. I knew it was you. Chu Feng scolded him. Brother, don't be angry. What I said was true. I'm mainly guarding against old Gu. This grandson is too despicable. He actually dares to set his sights on sister-in-law. Regardless of whether it's Fairy Qinshi or Luoyin, they're not people this old bastard can touch. I just want to teach him a lesson. The Manchurian tiger said with a sullen expression. Old Gu became anxious after hearing this and wanted to fight it out with him. I really saw Fairy Qinshi in the land of reincarnation. She remembered her past life, and that expression was too complicated. She's known as the prehistoric number 1 and her talents are world-shaking. She actually lost her way and gave birth to a child. Wait a moment, what did you say? Old Gu was anxious and coughing violently at the same time. He had received too much shock. This news made his chest feel so stuffy that he almost fainted. Go to the side, I'm annoyed. The Manchurian tiger didn't want to pay attention to him. What are you annoyed about? Tell me clearly, where's Qinshi? How did she give birth? Where is she? Old Gu was about to go berserk. The Manchurian tiger said angrily, Didn't you see that Grandpa Tiger's face is disfigured? I'm about to go crazy and you're still annoying me? He was originally a tiger, but now he was a donkey. He was indeed enraged, especially when he thought about how he had become like this. He became even angrier and continuously scolded the old donkey Lu Feiyang. Old Gu roared, Are you crazy? This old man is going crazy. Don't change the topic. Let me tell you, if this old man goes crazy, even this old man will be afraid. Following which, he said angrily, "How are you disfigured? You're a donkey with a donkey's brain. Don't you look like this from the start?" The Manchurian tiger put on a long face and said, "Nonsense. I'm a tiger, the true Tiger King. I'm awe-inspiring and murderous." "Stupid donkey, you don't even know what you are anymore, do you?" Old Goo roared. F***CKU. The Manchurian tiger was so angry that he kicked his hind legs. He thought of his experience in the ultimate land of reincarnation. The brothers were very sad and sorrowful at the moment of parting. He didn't know when they would meet again after this separation. Yellow Ox, the Black Yak, Ouyang Fong, and the others all wished each other well. At that time, the old donkey, Lu Feiyang, hugged the Manchurian tiger's neck and said, "Brother Tiger, let's be brothers in our next life. This old donkey has decided on you. Even though I'm greedy for life and afraid of death, I can die for you." The Manchurian tiger was also very excited. He put his arm around Lu Feiyang's shoulder and said, "Old donkey, it's enough to hear you say that. We're still brothers. I'm willing to be reincarnated as a donkey in my next life and be brothers with you. I'm happy." The old donkey patted his shoulder and pulled his hand, repeatedly praising him for being loyal. The Manchurian tiger was very happy and said, "Good brother." Then, he met with tragedy. At the final juncture, he remembered Fairy Qingshur's solemn warning from his previous life. Those who charged through the reincarnation realm with talismans in their hands had obsessions in their hearts. They swore that they would reincarnate into whatever they were. The Manchurian tiger's eyes stared straight back then, but it was already too late. Half of his body had already fallen into the whirlpool of reincarnation. At that time, he raised his head and glanced over. The old donkey's eyes were shining. He hadn't even stepped into the whirlpool yet, but he was already muttering something. He said that he came from a scholarly aristocratic family and wanted to be a scholar. F***CK your lungs, you donkey's dung egg. This was the Manchurian tiger's resentment in his final moments. He knew that it was too late. He had been tricked by that donkey into saying that he wanted to be reincarnated as a donkey, but that donkey himself wanted to run off to become a scholar. At this moment, the Manchurian tiger couldn't bear it any longer. He told the sad story of his reincarnation, leaving Chu Feng flabbergasted. "You're saying that the old donkey patted your shoulder, pulled your hand, and said that you were loyal. He tricked you into becoming a donkey, and then, in the blink of an eye, he reincarnated to become a scholar?" "Yes, that bastard. I'm so angry," the Manchurian tiger howled. He simply couldn't bear it when he thought of the past. Chapter 11:21. Chu Feng was speechless. He felt that this old donkey was too cruel. How could he do things like this? Gu Dao was warm-hearted and incomparably affectionate. He patted his chest and talked about brotherhood, but in the end, he tricked the Manchurian tiger into reincarnating as a donkey. On the other hand, he changed his mind and became a scholar. This was too immoral. After hearing this, Gu Chenhai jumped and clapped his hands in delight. He didn't pity the Manchurian tiger at all and directly commented, "Serves you right." The Manchurian tiger said angrily, "Old Gu, do you still have any morals? Have you been eaten by a donkey?" "Goddamn it, not eaten by a donkey. I'm about to die from anger," Old Gu said with a gloomy expression. "I also hate donkeys. This isn't my true body. Can you do me a favor? You want to understand Qingshi? No problem, I'll tell you." The Manchurian tiger stated his conditions. They had long since left the ground and found a place with beautiful spring sunshine and green grass. The Manchurian tiger looked at a lake and felt sorry for himself. His face was dejected. At this moment, he was a donkey with a donkey's head. He was truly depressed. You can even find the spirit transformation fruit for male and female transformations. I think it won't be a problem for you to find me a fruit that can change my appearance, right? I want to return to the tiger race. Old Gu immediately roared, "You still want to transform into a tiger? There are bloodline fruits, and I know a place that produces them, exotic desolate grade fruits. But I won't give them to you even if you beat me to death. If you want, I can give you the spirit transformation fruit and let you change your nature. Be at ease as a donkey, you stupid donkey." "Damn, you old ghost, you haven't heard of Grandpa Tiger's fame, have you? The whole universe knows. You frog in a well, I'll let you understand that the great Manchurian Tiger King can't be provoked." The two began to fight, but the Manchurian tiger was completely defeated. He was frightened by the surging blood energy of the stone coffin and immediately fled behind Chu Feng to seek protection. "Stop shouting, Brother Tiger. Tell me about your situation on the path of reincarnation," said Chu Feng. Luoyin was too shocking. She awakened in the ultimate land of reincarnation with millions of rays of auspicious light that illuminated the entire ancient land. She once said to herself that the clay idol was actually still there. These words made our hair stand on end. The Manchurian tiger recounted the events of the past. The clay idol that Qingshi was talking about was naturally the one at the end of the path of reincarnation. The talisman papers were all sacrificed to it there. Unfortunately, Qingshi didn't say much and didn't explain anything. "Qingshi, I'm waiting for you in the world of the living. Come back quickly," Old Gu called out in a timely manner. "You audacious old bastard who wants to seduce sister-in-law. What are you trying to do? Get lost." Chu Feng felt that this was a disgusting situation. Old Gu stomped his feet and shouted, "Jidade, Chu Feng, you're a reincarnation smuggler. I'm going to report you and tell the reincarnation hunters to come and arrest you." Chu Feng threatened, "If you dare to shout again, I will directly send you back to Yin Manor, and you will never be able to come out again." The Manchurian tiger continued to narrate the events of the past. After awakening, Qingshi deduced that such a small amount of talisman paper was not enough to protect so many of them. Therefore, their reincarnations might be flawed, and it would be difficult for them to awaken immediately. Perhaps they would only be able to remember their past lives after many years. From the looks of it, it was indeed true. Luoyin really became Fairy Qingshi. What happened to her specifically? Chu Feng asked. Although she still thinks of us and cares for us, we feel that she suddenly became faintly discernible like a fairy standing above the clouds. It makes people feel ashamed of their inferiority. However, she is still very good to your parents and us. When she mentioned your child, she was slightly sentimental. Child? Gu Chunhai suddenly went berserk and wanted to fight with his life on the line. He was almost insane. "You old vinegar jar, what are you jealous of? What does it have to do with you?" Ouch! The Manchurian tiger refuted him, but in the end, he let out a strange cry and kicked back in pain. Chu Feng used a lot of strength to suppress the stone coffin with reincarnation earth. Chu Feng threatened, "That's my wife, and we even have a child. Stop thinking about her. If you dare to let your imagination run wild again, I will immediately throw you into the extreme martial clan's ancestral grave." Nonsense. You should have seen it clearly in the ancient dream path. Qingshi was rescued by the patriarch, and a wisp of her soul entered the forbidden area. After a long time, she succeeded in reincarnating with great difficulty, but she was lost. Her relationship with you was an accident. No matter what, she is the mother of my child. You. Gu Chunhai felt as if he had been struck by a violent blow, as if he had been slashed by 10,000 knives. The Manchurian tiger whispered, "Chu Feng, brother, my sister-in-law told us before she reincarnated that she was Qin Luoyin in her previous life, and she is Qingshi in this life. Her fate with you is over. She has her pursuits and her path. Luoyin is only a small part of her long life, just a wave, a ripple. The past will be gone with the wind, so please forget her." Chu Feng was startled when he heard this. Gu Chunhai immediately became excited and trembled with excitement. He cried out, "This is Qingshi. Even though she suffered hardships and unfortunately had an unbearable past in the little underworld, she is still able to let go. She did not get angry, did not complain, and just calmly let go of the past. This is her, a true fairy, worthy of being the person I like. When Chu Feng heard this, he was so angry that he directly used the Heavenly Blood Star Space Mother Gold short sword to hack at it. He hacked at the stone coffin, and sparks flew everywhere. Gu Chenhai cried out, "Ji Dade, don't be unconvinced. What kind of person is Qingshi? She is the most talented person in prehistoric times. What can disturb her fundamental heart? Nothing. The short period of time in the underworld is indeed insignificant in her life." So, Gu Chenhai dilly-dallied. In the future, Gu Chenhai had a glib tongue. In the end, he was already foaming at the mouth in the coffin, but he still kept talking. "She is the mother of my child." Chu Feng only said this. Can't you say something else?" Gu Chenhai suddenly flew into a rage. "Fine, I'll say something else. If we meet again one day, what if she likes me with Qingshi's identity?" Chu Feng asked with his head lowered as he stepped on the stone coffin with one foot. "Disappear." Gu Chenhai flew into a rage out of humiliation. Next, they went on their way. They quarreled and fought along the way, but in the end they reached a consensus. They both wanted to become stronger. During this process, Gu Chenhai threatened to report Chu Feng as a reincarnation smuggler. Chu Feng threatened him, saying that he could throw him into famous mountains, great rivers, and other special terrains at any time and trap him for a lifetime, never to be reincarnated. No wonder you can't rest until Taiwu is dead. So you are Chu Feng. On the way, old Gu came back to his senses. He could understand many things in the past. Then, he inquired for information with a deep meaning and said, "That's right, where is the ultimate treasure that Taiwu wants to search for when he enters the underworld?" Chu Feng curled his lips and said, "Don't think about it. After stepping into reincarnation, you will only be left with a soul light to reincarnate. What can you bring back? If you want it, you can reincarnate into the underworld. I left it on earth." "You wastrel!" Gu Chenhai lamented bitterly and felt as if his heart was dripping blood. He felt that any one of the ultimate treasures in the legends of the Yang realm could suppress the world. Passing by like this would be a regret that would last for eternity. Gu Chenhai beat his chest and stamped his feet. "What a pity! Brat, you will regret it one day. You will cry day and night in your old age for missing out on such a treasure." Then, he said, "Chu Feng, little devil, don't say that I didn't give you a chance. I want to fight for a lifetime's fortune. Do you dare to go? This is a battle between true enemies. Love rival my ass." Chu Feng looked at him from the corner of his eyes. He really wanted to kick this coffin to pieces, but in the end, he endured it. He curled his lips and pretended not to care. He said, "What fortune? Where is it? Tell me." Gu Chenhai slapped the coffin and shouted, "Become a heavenly venerable overnight and even transform into an almighty. Do you dare to go with me and cross the immortal waterfall? So domineering? What kind of damned place is that? Are you trying to trick me?" Chu Feng was disdainful. He reckoned that this old ghost was holding back his fart. "Do you think I, Gu Chenhai, am that kind of person? You can go online and check. There is a heavenly waterfall in the Yang realm. Any evolved race with a bit of background knows about this place." Chu Feng immediately went to check and was immediately shocked. He then shouted, "Okay, what are you waiting for? Let's go." That was because there really was such a place. The introduction on the internet was very mysterious. There had even been ultimate powerhouses who walked out of that place. Gu Chenhai said, "Okay, let's go immediately. Looking at the time, there will be another immortal waterfall whistling. There will be a grand meeting." The Skyfall antecedental waterfall could be seen on normal days, but it would only appear once in a while, during a special period of time. They used the divine magnetic platform to continuously cross the void. After a few days, they finally approached the heavenly waterfall. A waterfall that led straight to the outer realm fell from the heavens and reached the Yang realm. The sound was like thunder. The long waterfall was golden and had existed since ancient times. It was so majestic and spectacular that Chu Feng was petrified. He couldn't say anything for a long time. The stone coffin had already shrunk and was covered in reincarnation soil. Others couldn't find it, so Chu Feng put it in his sleeve. The Manchurian tiger hated the donkey's body. He transformed into a young man with red lips and white teeth and followed Chu Feng. He was originally very beautiful and handsome, but he had two shortcomings. One was that he was born with a pair of very long and conspicuous ears and two large front teeth. It couldn't be helped. He was reincarnated as a donkey, so he more or less carried some of his race's characteristics after transforming. Apart from them, there were quite a few people here. The great clans of the Yang realm all knew of this place. Those who could come here were all members and disciples of powerful orthodoxies. Where did this originate from? Did it descend from beyond the heavens? Chu Feng asked in a low voice. He didn't startle the people nearby. The dust on some evolvers' bodies had condensed into armor-like lump. A thick layer covered their original appearance. It was unknown how many years they had been sitting there. It was as if they no longer had any signs of life, and had completely turned into fossils. There were also some people wearing ancient clothes. Even though they weren't tainted by dust, their clothes had already rotted. However, they were still breathing. There was a powerful blood energy hidden within their flesh. Clearly, their vitality was still exuberant, but they had definitely been sitting here for many years. Beside the heavenly waterfall, there were a few primal chaos holes. The people sitting inside were unfathomable, distorting time and space to form a whirlpool like the eye of the sea. It became their place of life and death seclusion. Apart from these experts, there were also many youths and young men and women. They were all representatives of the most powerful races that entered here. They were all elites. Among them were people that Chu Feng recognized. For example, some of the little friends he suppressed in the desolate border dragon nest back then had already grown up and become young men and women. Chu Feng laughed dryly. If he really recognized them, would those people fulfill their agreement and call him Big Brother? Apart from this, the Foarok, Phoenix Fairy, White Feather, and the others he met in the Grey Transaction area were also here. It was to the extent where Chu Feng even saw Zhong Xiu. The extreme martial lineage's core inheritor that had escaped a calamity had a pair of golden wings on his back. He possessed the primal chaos demonic bloodline. If there were no accidents, he was the strongest among the core disciples of the extreme martial lineage who were of a similar age. Apart from these people, there were also many outstanding heroes. Their identities weren't simple at all. Some of the men had outstanding bearing and were incomparably refined and elegant. They wore white socks that weren't tainted by dust. Meanwhile, there were a few women that were like Jade Lake fairies. They didn't eat the food of mortals. Their clothes were whiter than snow, elegant and otherworldly. This made Chu Feng astonished. These people definitely had great origins. Their backgrounds weren't simple. He became more and more certain that this heavenly waterfall was extremely terrifying. It actually attracted so many creatures with astonishing talent. Suddenly, he was startled. He saw a young girl in the distance. She looked 11 or 12 years old, clear and tranquil. Was that Linoi? No, it was the little girl he saw in the desolate border dragon nest back then. Now that she had grown up, she really looked like Linoi. Was this her or her daughter? Suddenly, Chu Feng found another familiar person, Ing Wudi, an old friend from the Little Yin realm. He actually saw him from afar. Did his sister, the silver-haired little Lolita, Ing Xiaoxiao, also come? Did Ing Zhixian also appear here? Chapter 11:22. Granny Meng's Soup, A bowl of soup reverses yin and yang, molds the foundation, strengthens the soul, and cuts the shackles to build a bridge that leads straight to the end of the mist region. There was an old woman with a stooped body. She was extremely short, no more than 1.5 meters tall. She was as thin as a match, and her skin was dark and dark. Her eye sockets were sunken, and her face was full of wrinkles. Her lips were purple, and her teeth were almost all gone. She was peddling the famous Granny Meng's soup in the Yang realm. It was the most nourishing for the body and soul. There was a bridge there with a stone arch. Its style was extremely ancient, and it wasn't small. It could be said to be grand and ancient. It had experienced the baptism of time. The bridge was not far from the heavenly immortal waterfall, lying on the surface of the river. There was only one old woman on the bridge, and she was peddling Granny Meng's soup. She was doing business here, and she wore old clothes as if she had crawled out from an ancient tomb many eras ago. This business is actually still here. Within Chu Feng's sleeve, Gu Chunhai, who was in the heavenly gold sarcophagus, felt his heart tremble. He sucked in a breath of cold air and was deeply shocked. It existed since prehistoric times? Asked Chu Feng. This was quite astonishing. Gu Chunhai nodded and said, yes, there was this business back then. However, the one selling Granny Meng's soup wasn't her, but someone else. The two of them communicated secretly, but they weren't worried about being discovered by experts. This was because Chu Feng placed his hand on the small sarcophagus and didn't need to spread his divine sense too far. Moreover, this was the location of the heavenly immortal waterfall. All experts' perception would be sharply weakened by the special mist that pervaded the majestic golden waterfall. It was indescribably terrifying, and the degree of decline was extremely great. Gu Chunhai was horrified. This unfathomable organization from back then had actually crossed countless years and all kinds of tribulations to appear in this world. He could even see that the black glazed bowl in the old woman's hand was still the same one from back then. It was pitch black and terrifying, and there were complex and strange symbols carved on it. "Auntie, how much for a bowl?" asked a young woman in her 20s. Her appearance was pure and delicate, and her eyes were clear. She wore a moon-white dress that fluttered in the wind, and she looked like a fairy that was about to ride the wind and return. "1 tael of mother gold for a bowl of soup," said the old woman. She stood on the bridge and grinned. She only had 1 or 2 teeth left. The elegant lady sighed. She bowed slightly before turning around to leave. Things like mother gold were too rare. This was a strategic resource that could be used to forge ultimate weapons. It was hard to find even in this world. Who got it would melt it into their clan's weapon. Of Granny Meng. Chu Feng was speechless after hearing this. A bowl of Mengpa soup was so expensive that it required 1 tael of mother gold to exchange for it? It was too much. It's still the same price and it smells the same. How many years has it been? The prices have soared, but it hasn't changed. It's a good price. Gu Chunhai was actually sighing, saying that he had drunk a bowl of it in the past. Chu Feng really wanted to spit at him. How was this not too expensive? And he Meng and Gu and Meng. Meng and said. Meng and Gu. Old Gu said indignantly, "Brat, you finally know now, right? How much mother gold did you rob from me back then? You stole 5 to 6 pots of Granny Meng's soup." Chu Feng didn't know how valuable Granny Meng's soup was. This thing can supplement the foundation and nourish the soul, light, and body. It doesn't have any side effects. Of course, it's worth a lot, said old. Chu Feng rubbed his face, trying to make himself look less and less like the original Chu Feng in order to avoid being recognized. In truth, he had already changed himself before coming here. He had used his domain techniques to change his appearance. "Auntie, do you accept other things in exchange other than mother gold? For example, sky gold stone?" When old Gu heard Chu Feng's question, he was immediately choking with anger. This little bastard hated him for always mentioning Qingshi not long ago. He used the heavenly blood starry sky mother golden sword to madly chop the stone coffin. Chu Feng had embezzled the peeled stone skin and taken it for his own. Now he was actually taking it out to buy Meng Po's soup. Little thief. Old circulated his qi and puffed out white smoke from his nose. It can be exchanged. 1 tael of mother gold is equivalent to 10 taels of sky gold stone. The old woman grinned. Chu Feng felt that her wrinkled skin was about to rot and fall off at any moment. It was a little scary. At the same time, he was astonished that this sky gold stone was so valuable. It could be exchanged with mother gold at a ratio of 10:1. This was beyond his expectations. Thinking about it carefully, Old used a sky gold stone coffin to bury himself. That was quite extravagant and gorgeous. All right, Auntie. I understand. When I have money, I'll definitely come and buy 2 bowls of Granny Meng soup. I'll drink one and pour the other. I'll go all out. Old was furious after hearing this. He knew that this little thief had ready-made sky gold stone on him. They were all chopped off from his body. He would come here to buy soup sooner or later. This area was too vast. The waterfall that reached the sky was extremely spectacular. It fell from the outer realm with a terrifying momentum. It was like a golden river of stars pouring down in torrents and never extinguishing. Apart from the stone arch bridge in front of them, there were some simple stone pavilions in the distance. Coarse stones were piled up simply and looked very primitive. There were many people there, ranging from the old to the strong to the young. There was no limit to their age. All of them were here. It was actually a simple and crude market square. There were people in the shabby and crude stone pavilions. They were placed on stone tables for people to view and trade. There were even some straw mats outside the primitive stone buildings. Some people were sitting cross-legged and selling some strange items. Chu Feng's heart stirred. He walked over because he saw the Rock Emperor, the Phoenix Fairy, and some other evolvers he knew walking over. Soon after, Zhong Xiu, Ing Wudi, and the others approached. Following that, Linoi also appeared. She walked over and picked out some items. 2 old men followed behind her to ensure her safety at all times. Although she was only 11 or 12 years old, she was already ethereal and elegant. She had an indescribable immortal aura like a fairy that had descended into the world. Chu Feng's heart trembled. The young girl's bearing was very pure, but there was also a faint heavenly might on her body. It was faintly emitted through icy skin and jade bones. Only a physical reincarnator like him could sense it. Chu Feng was apprehensive. What had happened to this girl who was suspected to be Lin Naoi or her daughter? He thought of the figure he saw in the Samsara Ultimate Ancient Palace. Her clothes fluttered in the wind, and her bearing was peerless and incomparable. In that ancient palace there were many imprints of people who had passed through reincarnation. They were engraved into the ancient palace. Even Chu Feng was forced to leave a mark there. Because of this, he carved a sentence: "How lonely it is to be invincible." She's very similar to that figure in the land of Samsara. Although she's still slightly immature and inexperienced, her bearing and aura are exactly the same. It can be said to be divine. How could Chu Feng not be shocked? Could it be that she really was that exceptionally graceful woman he saw in the Samsara palace? It was unknown which evolutionary civilization she was born in. Either way, it was an extremely long time ago. She had previously passed through reincarnation. Could it be that she had successfully reincarnated again? He suspected that as time went on, this young girl's body would be fully displayed. She would completely display that woman's bearing and heavenly might. Not simple. The radiance in Chu Feng's eyes flickered continuously. He stared at her figure from far away. Was this Linoi or her daughter? From the time that had passed, it should be the latter. In the distance, that young girl's divine senses were too sharp. The instant Chu Feng moved sideways, she turned around and looked in his direction. It was clear that she sensed that someone was looking at her. He was almost discovered. This left Chu Feng deeply astonished. This type of divine senses was too astonishing. He had already suppressed all types of auras, and there weren't any fluctuations at all. Yet, she could still sense it? He believed that this wasn't a normal divine sense but a kind of instinct. That was because the dense mist emitted by the immortal waterfall here suppressed everyone's spirit. As she really came. Chu Feng discovered Yingzhixian. She had a graceful figure and a beautiful appearance. She could be said to be an outstanding beauty. At the same time, she had a faint sense of otherworldliness. She was like a fairy that had been punished and reincarnated into the human world. She was ethereal and hazy. Her entire body was enveloped in a faint white mist, giving people a feeling that she was unapproachable and otherworldly. Her appearance hadn't changed over the years. Moreover, her temperament was even more outstanding. She could be considered a well-known figure in the Yin realm. After coming to the Yang realm, she had undergone a qualitative transformation. A myriad of thoughts ran through Chu Feng's mind. He didn't know how the other old friends who had entered the Yang realm were doing. Did they also have a rare encounter? Ziluan, Yuan Mo, Jiang Luoshan, Daoist Jin Lin, Shi Hong. There were too many people, and he didn't know where they were scattered. Chu Feng rubbed his face again to make himself more and more unfamiliar. Even if he met someone he knew, it would be difficult to distinguish them because there were some people here that he really couldn't trust. Old Gu, did you see that those divine sons and disciples of celestial venerables have Tao protectors and divine kings following them to protect them? Is it all right for me to appear like this? Do you think you can rely on just yourself? Although I really want to slice you up and study why you're bad from head to toe, that's a different matter. Since you've agreed to give me a bit of soul flesh, I'll sell it to you for the next few years. I'll be responsible for fighting bloody battles for you. Even if divine kings come to provoke me, I'll fight and suppress them while bathed in blood. Gu Chenhai replied. For the sake of soul flesh, he could let go of any prejudices. Even though he had been cheated by Chu Feng, who was his strongest love rival, he still wouldn't refuse. This was because his big brother had been searching for this substance back then but couldn't find it. One had to know that Li Su was unrivaled throughout the world. What good things had he not seen? He even dared to lay his hands on an ultimate treasure and dared to snatch it. Only soul flesh would be his eternal regret. He believed in his big brother's foresight, so he wanted a piece of soul flesh no matter what. He had a certain amount of confidence. He had evolved rapidly in the extreme martial ancestral tomb, and his strength had increased greatly. Although he was still far from his former self, he was confident that he could contend against divine kings without fear. Of course, don't take the initiative to cause trouble. At the very least, you can't anger the existence in the eyes of primal chaos. Old Gu warned. He was rather apprehensive. Next to the immortal waterfall, there were a few whirlpools like the eyes of the sea. The primal chaos was swirling there, and there was an indescribably terrifying figure sitting cross-legged within. Old Gu seriously suspected that there was a celestial venerable sitting cross-legged there, and there might even be an almighty being sitting there in seclusion. Chu Feng approached the stone pavilion. What kind of trash was being sold here? He was a bit dumbstruck. For example, there was a pitch-black conch that was a bit damaged, but it was placed openly on the stone table. Don't miss this chance. This is a heavenly object that rushed down from the immortal waterfall. Once refined into a secret treasure, its power is immeasurable. In the past, someone refined a world-shocking magic conch. After blowing it, 3 great clans were slaughtered overnight, shocking the Yang realm. The seller was a middle-aged man who was earnestly hawking. His words were fairly confident, as if he was promoting a world-suppressing treasure. To the side, in a crude stone pavilion, an old man disdainfully glanced at them, then unhurriedly introduced his own items. Do you see that damaged stone pot? Even though it's missing half of its spout and isn't complete, its origins are incredible. This is a heavenly object that emerged from the immortal waterfall. It isn't something that some seashells or driftwood can compare to. If it's repaired, it might become an ultimate object. The old man's words were calm. He raised the 4-inch stone pot and said with a serious expression, "Do you all know that our Yang realm has an ultimate treasure that is also made of stone? Even though it has already disappeared in the passage of time, its legend, its glory, and its unparalleled offensive power are still being passed down among the ultimate experts. It is known as a weapon that shakes the Yang realm and suppresses several eras." These words were very tempting to the evolvers who had just entered this place. All of them stopped in their tracks because they had indeed heard the patriarch of their sect comment on some weapons in the history of evolution. He had mentioned such an ancient weapon that was suspected to be made of stone, but he didn't go into detail. Do you all know about the so-called immortal burial era? If it wasn't for that ancient weapon suppressing the Yang realm, we would have failed. We completely relied on it to defeat the immortals and bury them in the dust of history. Chu Feng was doubtful. Wasn't there a kind of speculation that the immortals might not have been defeated, but were just isolated in another space? In the end, it wasn't even certain whether the Yang realm won. The old man said, "You all should know that the unparalleled weapon I mentioned just now, the ultimate treasure that is said to be able to suppress the immortals, came from this sky-high waterfall. Although the stone pot in my hand is damaged, if it is repaired, who dares to say that it isn't the second supreme treasure?" Chu Feng was speechless when he heard this. He tapped the small coffin in his sleeve and asked Old Gu if the artifacts here were reliable. In prehistoric times there were also such fissures here. Some of them are indeed items that came from the sky-high waterfall, but to pass off fish eyes as pearls, one has to rely on their own eyesight. It's hard to say in this era. I don't know how trustworthy the people of this era are. Many people gathered at the old man's stall. Some evolvers went up to investigate the stone pot. Many people frowned and remained silent. This thing was indeed an old object. Moreover, there were complicated and unfathomable great Tao runes carved inside. However, they were rather incomplete and faintly discernible. Chu Feng looked around. Many stalls were filled with people, including Linoi, Emperor Rock, Ing Wudi, and Zhong Xiu. They were all choosing and wanting to buy. Old Gu, why do I feel that the artifacts here aren't simple? Moreover, many people really want to buy them? Of course. If you hold an artifact fished out from the immortal waterfall, you'll get twice the results with half the effort if you meditate and evolve in the waterfall. This is the conclusion of our predecessors. There was actually such a reason. Chu Feng came to a sudden realization. No wonder this place was so popular. All evolvers who came here wanted to find suitable objects. Suddenly, a noise came from afar as a large group of evolvers swarmed over. Mother Gold Cauldron? There's actually such an item. Regardless of whether it's real or fake, just its material alone is enough to show disdain for everything here. This item is priceless. Heavens, this is actually Mother Gold of time. This ultimate material is even rarer than other Mother Gold. It's difficult for it to appear even once in many eras. Exclamations rose and fell in the distance, causing a huge commotion. There was only a straw mat at the stall, and a middle-aged woman was sitting cross-legged on it. Her mouth was tightly shut, and she didn't say anything. She was relying on the item to attract people. No one had expected such an artifact to appear. In people's impressions, 9 of the artifacts here were fake and 1 was real. Most of them were imitations. Now, someone had taken out a cauldron refined from Mother Gold of time. It was too shocking. Even if it was fake, it was still frightening and terrifying enough. Not to mention them, even the Almighty would covet this material. According to legend, Mother Gold of Time contained fragments of time and had corresponding traces of the great Tao. Nourished by flesh and blood all year round and fused with soul light, one could comprehend the power of time. Who didn't care? This kind of material was too shocking. Not to mention making a weapon, even the original embryo would make people jealous. Even the founder of a sect would fight over it. In the end, a fist-sized cauldron appeared in this kind of place. How could it not cause a commotion? This cauldron was fished out from the heaven-reaching waterfall, said that middle-aged woman. She only said this sentence and didn't say anything else. The simple and unadorned cauldron was curled up with the power of time. Even though it was simple and unadorned, there was an astonishing halo on the outside. At this moment, the fist-sized small cauldron fell into Ingzhixian's hands. She was carefully observing it while the others surrounded it. They were all waiting to personally examine it. Chapter 11:23. Chu Feng also walked forward and stood outside the crowd. He carefully felt the power of time and narrowed his eyes as if he was in a chaotic flow of time. This furnace was simply too precious and priceless. Not to mention the others, even Chu Feng wanted to sneak up on them and rob them. He didn't even need to think about it. It was impossible for him to obtain this treasure. This thing was enough to make celestial venerables and even almighty figures jealous. He couldn't understand who the middle-aged woman was. Why would she put such a creation artifact on a mat and sell it in a stall? Normally, no evolver would be willing to part with it. Who would sell it? They would definitely keep it for themselves. This thing was too rare. It was time Mother Gold. The great Tao fragments it contained were too terrifying. One couldn't find a second one in many eras. In Chu Feng's sleeve, Gu Chenhai, who was inside the heavenly gold sarcophagus, was dumbstruck. He secretly swallowed his saliva and wondered if that woman was a fool. She was actually asking for takeaway. At this moment, Ingzhixian was holding the simple yet radiant furnace. Her eyes were clear and there was a faint white mist on her peerless face, as if it was covered by a veil. She looked at it carefully for a long time. Her beautiful eyes were no longer tranquil, and there was a faint divine glow. Even someone as calm as her was slightly excited. This was a true time furnace. It could be expected that even the quasi-saint race's old patriarch would be shocked if he learned of this. He would certainly do everything he could to obtain this furnace. What does Senior need? Ingzhixian hadn't opened her mouth yet, but an old servant behind her couldn't help but ask. It could be seen that Ingzhixian was also very concerned. Her fingers were as translucent as white jade, delicate and slender. They were very beautiful as she held the time furnace with all her might. You're from the quasi-saint race. I heard that you possess the wonderful 7 treasures technique. You can use this technique to exchange, the middle-aged woman said bluntly. Everyone gasped and then sighed. Such a time furnace was priceless no matter what. It could be considered a treasure of the Yang realm. People originally thought she was stupid, which was why she would sell it. Now it seemed that the middle-aged woman clearly knew its value. That was why she opened her mouth and wanted to exchange it for one of the Yang realm's ultimate technique. The old servant was tongue-tied. Ingzhixian opened her mouth. Her voice was pleasant to the ears as she said, "May I ask Senior if you can use other things to exchange for it? As for the others, I'm afraid you guys will be even more reluctant. Let's use the quasi-immortal tribe's sect-guarding breathing technique then," the middle-aged woman said expressionlessly. When everyone heard this, they all had strange expressions. There was no way they could continue their business. At this moment, a white-clothed and otherworldly young man with hair that was less than an inch on his head appeared. He was ethereal and otherworldly, and he was truly elegant and otherworldly like jade. He wore a special monastic robe. It was snow-white and glossy, and there were some interweaving golden threads on it. It was not the usual red monastic robe. "Senior, I'm also very interested. I wonder if there's any room for negotiation? Without a doubt, he was from the Buddha race. The thunderous breathing technique can be exchanged for this furnace. The middle-aged woman spoke indifferently. She was dressed in gray and appeared very ordinary, but no one dared to probe her cultivation. Thinking about it, selling the time furnace so brazenly like this was definitely not an ordinary person. The group of people was silent. This woman even dared to ask for the thunderous breathing technique? The Buddha race was one of the strongest races in the Yang realm. This breathing technique had never fallen out of the top 5, regardless of whether it was in history or now. It could be said that this race's breathing technique was extremely powerful and could be called the ultimate. Since ancient times, some of the top-ranked breathing techniques had been replaced and could no longer squeeze into the top 10. However, the Buddha race's breathing technique had always been at the top and could suppress the entire Yang realm. With this breathing technique, one could evolve all kinds of wondrous techniques and didn't need to cultivate other secret manuals. According to legend, one of the strongest secret techniques in the Yang realm, the trump card of the Buddha race, salvation of the world, was comprehended after cultivating the thunderous breathing technique to the extreme. I can't make the decision. The white-clothed short-haired man shook his head. These were polite words, but they were actually a refusal. It was impossible to exchange the thunderous breathing technique. The thunderous breathing technique could suppress the Yang realm. What kind of joke was this? No matter how precious the time furnace was, it couldn't be compared to the Buddha race's supreme scripture. How could it be exchanged? For a moment, this place was silent. Everyone understood that this middle-aged woman looked quiet and didn't speak much, but her appetite was actually very big. How could ordinary objects be able to move her? What was rare was that no one actually looted and no one actually made a move here. Even the few people in the eyes of primal chaos in front of the waterfall who had acted strangely earlier were now quiet and didn't come out. Obviously, they were also stunned by the middle-aged woman's conditions. From this, it could be seen that the middle-aged woman's background wasn't simple. She made people revere her, and no one dared to cause trouble. Everyone, perhaps you think that my conditions are too harsh. In that case, let me divulge some information. Do you know who the first owner of this item is? The middle-aged woman looked at everyone. Who? A divine king asked in a simple and direct manner. The prehistoric dark hand, Li Su. When this kind of words came out, the place was quiet at first, but then it boiled over. After hearing this, Chu Feng was first dumbfounded, and then he didn't know why, but he actually wanted to laugh. Old Gu's sworn brother, this was really notorious. He had become the publicly recognized Dark Hand, but judging from everyone's reaction, his fame was too shocking. For a moment, even the white-robed Buddha from the Buddhist race was moved. The people of the quasi-saint race also revealed strange expressions. They were all moved once again. Not to mention the others, their hearts were surging and their blood was flowing faster. The madman who dared to attack the martial madman and beat him until his head bled was still one of the strongest legends in the history of evolution. Chu Feng secretly asked Old Gu, "Is this really his big brother's item?" Bullsh *T. I've never seen this broken furnace before. Old Gu insisted that he had never seen this thing before. The middle-aged woman said, before Li Su died, or perhaps before he disappeared, he obtained this item and personally fished it out from the waterfall. He studied it for 2 to 3 years and treasured it, not letting anyone see it. In the end, he died with the eternal mystery, but this item was left behind. When these words were spoken, it caused an even greater commotion. Some youngsters and even divine kings ordered the people around them to leave. This was to report to their clans and ask their elders if they wanted to bid for it. Li Su once said that this item is strange and contains a great secret, the middle-aged woman added. Things had already reached this point, and the storm it caused was unimaginable. Even people from the primal chaos I walked out of the vortex and looked down from the sky. Chu Feng secretly said, "Old Gu, this is unbearable. She's using your big brother's fame to peddle fake goods. Don't you want to expose her? Or tell me some secrets and I'll report her for you in the future. You want to get benefits from me?" Old Gu looked as if he had seen through Chu Feng. Soon after, his reaction was very strange as he muttered solemnly, "Could it be that thing?" "What thing? Don't tell me there really is such an item?" Chu Feng was astonished. "There really is such an item. 2 or 3 years before my big brother died, he indeed fished out an item from heaven-piercing waterfall. He was extremely cautious and didn't let me see it. He said that he already had a premonition that it was an extremely terrifying item. Celestial sovereign realm experts might die if they wore it. It was extremely inauspicious." Old Gu recalled the events of the past and was endlessly bewildered. Could it be that it was this time furnace? Chu Feng was astonished. There really was such an ancient artifact. This was too astonishing. "And, if it's that thing, I advise you to hide as far away as possible. You can't bear that kind of fortune. Back then, my big brother said that only he and a few others could study it for a long time. If others dared to do so, they would undoubtedly die. This thing represents inauspiciousness and extreme terror." Old Gu completely recalled the events of the past and was incomparably solemn. He actually said these words. At this time, a young lady identical to Linoy also came. She smiled and nodded towards Ingzhixian, the white-clothed Buddha child, and the others. She received the time furnace and personally went to look. However, her reaction was very strange. It was as if she had encountered a snake or scorpion. She had just placed it in her hands, yet she threw it away in an instant. Her complexion was slightly pale. Chu Feng keenly noticed that a special aura soared from her body. That was an energy trace that belonged to the ultimate zone of reincarnation. Only someone like him, who succeeded in crossing reincarnation with his corporeal body, could sense it. Chu Feng was astonished. How could this young lady identical to Linoy have this kind of reaction? Just now, she clearly used her awakened reincarnation methods and memories. One had to bear in mind that Chu Feng had seen the imprint she left behind in the Palace of Reincarnation. That was a peerless and terrifying figure. Endless years ago, in an era even longer than the prehistoric era, she had reincarnated. This possibly meant that she had just recognized what kind of item the time furnace was. Could it be that she had come into contact with it in the prehistoric era? This little fairy, are you a bit afraid of it, or are you saying that you have some understanding of it? The middle-aged woman revealed a strange expression as she inquired. Chapter 11:24. There was a record of it? Everyone was very surprised, and at the same time their spirits were shaken. Were they going to figure out the origins of this object? Not to mention the others, even the evolvers in the eyes of primal chaos had come out. There was no need to elaborate on the people present. Who wouldn't want this furnace? That should be a unique manuscript made of special materials that are tough and difficult to damage. But under the wetting of time, more than half of it is still incomplete. There are a few pages with pictures and descriptions of the dimensions. It mentions this time furnace, and after a careful look, I believe it is the object in front of us. The words of the girl who looked like Linoy stirred the crowd. They were eager to know the origins of this furnace. Even the middle-aged woman selling the furnace was moved. She was no longer as calm as before, instead seriously asking about the details. It was because their organization had deeply experienced the fist-sized little furnace's terror. From ancient times until now, they had truly suffered greatly, their losses horrifying. The owner of the manuscript understood Li Su and had come into contact with him. Even if his strength wasn't as great as the prehistoric Dark Hand, he wasn't much weaker. He once mentioned that Li Su's death or disappearance was likely related to this furnace. After these words were spoken, the entire area fell silent. Everyone was dumbfounded and held their breaths, no longer making a sound. Li Su's death was an unsolvable mystery, a case without a clue. Even now, no one knew how he had disappeared. His glorious and insufferably arrogant era of rule had abruptly ended. Some people said that he had wanted to attack the true Great Een realm in a towering rage for a beautiful woman, but he had encountered a terrifying dark hand and died. Some people said that he had opened up the path to the Great Een realm, but an accident had occurred. He had rushed through on his own and hadn't been able to bring his troops in time. Others said that apart from the evolvers at the top of the known pyramid in the Yang realm, there was also the Misty region. An unknown entity had acted decisively and destroyed Li Su. Some people even said that the reincarnation hunter had joined forces with the celestial venerables and the almighty predators to kill Li Su. The most terrifying entity had attacked together and killed Li Su. There were many legends, but none of them mentioned that Li Su's death was related to a small furnace. The time furnace was a rare and priceless treasure, but no one believed that this fist-sized furnace could bury the world-shaking Li Su. Today was the first time people had heard of such a rumor. Old Gu, is it reliable? Was your big brother killed by this small furnace? Chu Feng secretly asked Gu Chenhai. Old Gu was furious and said, "Bullshit! My big brother can't be buried by the heavens and extinguished by the earth. How could he die so cowardly under a small furnace?" Moreover, he had long seen through the strangeness of the time furnace and was already on guard. The girl who looked like Linoy continued to talk about some details. For example, Li Su had studied the time cauldron in the past. He had not come out for several days and immersed the cauldron with the power of creation. This shocked Chu Feng, and it also shocked Gu Chenhai. There were some details that even Gu Chenhai didn't know. How could the letter record them? Gu Chenhai was surprised and bewildered. He guessed that it was one of Li Su's concubines or a heavenly fairy from a great sect that he had captured and turned into a maid that had leaked the secret. Otherwise, how could the outside world know of it? Apart from Li Su, there were two other masters of the time furnace. It was clearly recorded that they died in this furnace, the girl said, revealing the last part of the record. How Li Su had disappeared was still a mystery, but the other two had indeed died under the time furnace. This was recorded in the blood-colored characters in the lone letter. This was horrifying. They were at least almighty existences, but they had died inexplicably. Moreover, the murderer was pointing to this furnace? Yes, that's right. This is a great vicious object. It contains mysteries. The middle-aged seller nodded and didn't deny it. Clearly, she knew many things and understood more. Senior seems to have controlled this heavenly object for many years. Are you unharmed? The girl who looked like Linoy asked. The middle-aged woman was calm and indifferent. It doesn't belong to me, but is collected by our organization. There have indeed been some tragedies in these years. When everyone heard this, they immediately spoke up one after another, asking her to explain all the abnormalities of the time furnace. Someone said, "We are interested in buying it, so we should understand the details." The others nodded one after another, echoing, "Yes, we are interested in this object. Senior should be honest and not deceive us. She and I are of the same origin, and we come from the same organization. We have never cheated anyone, and from prehistoric times until now, we have never had a bad reputation." The middle-aged woman spoke, pointing towards the old woman who was selling Grandma Meng's soup on the stone bridge. When everyone heard this, there wasn't a single person who wasn't moved. Many people's expressions changed. No wonder even the Empyrean-level existences didn't dare rob them from the eyes of primal chaos. It turned out that they had this kind of foundation behind them. Some young men and women didn't know, but some robust adults and older generation figures were horrified. This organization was extremely terrifying. Eras changed, and fierce individuals who had dominated for a period of time passed away. However, this organization still existed, still carrying out the business of the past. This was incomparably terrifying. For example, every once in a while, they would come to sell Grandma Meng's soup when opportunities appeared at the heavenly waterfall. This kind of precious liquid was treated as a strategic resource by the Hung clan, Li clan, and the other most powerful clans. Once they obtained it, they definitely wouldn't sell it, but they dared to do this. One of our organization's leaders back then researched this furnace for close to 100 years. He didn't leave it day and night, baptizing it with soul light all year round. In the end, he died inexplicably, passing away without a sound. Following the middle-aged woman's words, this place was stirred up. At the same time, everyone felt horrified. This was truly an inauspicious object. How powerful was this organization? It was comparable to the most powerful orthodoxies in the Yang realm. Even one of their leaders from the past died because of this. This was a huge matter. In just 100 years, the leader comprehended many divine techniques and incomplete heavenly technique. There were even some breathing technique. If they could be completed, they would all be forbidden ultimate arts. This immediately made many people reveal strange expressions. Even though they felt that it was inappropriate, they didn't feel that it was too terrifying. There was actually a mysterious inheritance within this time furnace. Later on, from ancient times until now, there were 6 generations of our organization's leaders or supreme elders. All of them died inexplicably because they researched this furnace. The middle-aged woman spoke frankly. From then on, this small furnace was sealed in the warehouse for a relatively long period of time. No one touched it again because it represented extreme inauspiciousness. All of this was just as Li Su had said to Gu Chenhai in private. He warned him not to touch it because there weren't many blessings in this world. If he touched it, he would definitely die after a long period of time. Outsiders didn't know what Li Su said, but what the middle-aged woman said made the evolvers present feel terrified. For a moment, all of them retreated and didn't dare to personally examine this furnace again. The middle-aged woman said, "Our organization has always been candid in doing business. We've never cheated the old or the young. If there's anything, just say it. That's why we've told everyone everything. Senior, you're trying to scare us away. Who would dare to buy it after hearing your introduction?" The middle-aged woman was very calm as she said, "Then let me add one more point. The 10th wondrous technique in the world, Hell's Return, was created after our organization's successive leaders observed the time furnace and were deeply inspired." Bang! This area immediately became clamorous and completely chaotic. What? Some people cried out in alarm. How could they not cry out in alarm? This was really too astonishing. This was explosive news. The top 10 wondrous techniques of the Yang realm had almost all been lost. Every one of them was a strategic trump card for a clan. Some wondrous techniques required all members of a clan to act together in order to be displayed. The power was boundless and could suppress the world. Now, there were too few complete techniques that had been passed down. More or less, their foundations had been broken. Chapter 11:25. The Return of the Underworld. This wonderful technique was too astonishing in the history of evolution. It was so powerful that it was enough to sweep through the world and intimidate all races. No one dared disobey it. It was actually comprehended from the time furnace by the leaders of that organization. Finally, it was a complete and systematic creation. This was fairly astonishing. Moreover, our dead leaders said that they only explored the deeper regions of the time furnace. As for the end, they could only vaguely see it and couldn't set foot on it. "Elder, there's a big situation at the heavenly waterfall. Ancestor Xian, I have an important secret report to the clan." For a moment, the evolvers at the scene couldn't stay any longer. They either walked into the distance or left the area. They used various communication tools to contact their respective sects and clans. So much so that some domain researchers activated the divine magnetic platform and returned directly to their clans to explain and report in person. This place was bustling with activity. Many creatures surrounded them, including humans, divine birds, and vicious beasts. They were all looking at the time furnace. Additionally, the leaders of the various top-notch evolutionary sects were on their way in preparation to rush over here. In front of the heavenly waterfall, many people were in awe and fear of this furnace. The middle-aged woman said, "It's actually nothing. As long as one doesn't wear it for a long time, nothing will happen. There's no karmic entanglement." The group of people was skeptical. They had to fight for this thing, but they would definitely leave it to the old fellows in their clans to research. Some of the younger ones didn't dare touch it. Many people looked at the girl who looked like Linoi. Even Ing Zhixian nodded in greeting and asked her if it would be inauspicious to touch it for a short period of time. The girl said, "There's no detailed record in the letter. It only mentioned that one should avoid it as much as possible and not stay with it for a long time. Otherwise, it'll be difficult for one to survive in this world." Everyone nodded and felt slightly relieved. The terrifying creatures that walked out of the primal chaos emitted a white mist that enveloped the primal chaos. They had personally picked up the furnace and examined it seriously. Later on, the others couldn't help but step forward after those creatures left to feel and experience it. The time furnace was divided into regions? Everyone probed but didn't sense anything. They guessed that this was most likely related to their level of strength, and that they weren't qualified. They also didn't know whether those creatures that walked out of the primal chaos had an indescribable experience or sensed something. In the end, Chu Feng couldn't hold back. He really didn't believe it and wanted to go over to take a look. Gu Chenhai warned sternly, "Brat, don't look for trouble yourself. Haven't you heard? Curiosity killed a dragon." Chu Feng said, "It's not like I want to take it for myself. Even if I wanted to, I'm not qualified to compete with an ultimate orthodoxy. I'm just going there to take a look. Didn't I say that it won't affect me in the short term?" If that wasn't the case, he wouldn't have gone over. Chu Feng waited in line. When it was his turn, he picked up the furnace. It was really heavy, as expected of the mother gold. He weighed it in his hand and felt that it was very heavy. He looked at the old-fashioned furnace. It left his body, not coming into contact with it. There was actually a layer of light around it. That was the power of time, making one feel as if time was sometimes frozen, sometimes chaotic. Chu Feng's expression changed immediately. This furnace was very powerful. If it was used well, it could temporarily freeze the nearby spacetime. If it was used against an enemy, it would be a terrifying attack. He explored for a moment, but unfortunately, he didn't discover any special hidden domain in this furnace. This also meant that he couldn't comprehend the scriptures and technique. Finally, he returned it, turned around, and walked to the side. "It's a little strange." Chu Feng's heart sank. It wasn't that his intuition was heaven-defying or that he had some special reaction. It was because the stone jar in his bosom had moved slightly when he was inspecting the time furnace. It was very weak and almost indiscernible. He walked far away and used his hand to caress the stone jar. He used his spirit to explore it. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat. When his finger reached into the stone jar and touched the reincarnation soil, he was instantly horrified. That was because he felt his scalp tighten. As for his fingers, they hurt as if they were being grabbed by something. This made him tremble. He felt a bone-piercing chill and cold air curled up behind him. Chu Feng probed with his spirit and looked at the scene inside the stone jar. His scalp immediately went numb. What did he see? There were actually black fingerprints on a few of his fingers. It was as if something had grabbed his hand fiercely and left behind such terrifying marks. However, no one had ever held his hand or grabbed his fingers before this. He didn't even have any contact with other people or objects. Old Gu? Could be ruled out. They had been together for such a long time and nothing had happened. Thinking about it carefully, it could only be the time furnace. Because these fingers had held it and touched it, could it be that this had happened? This was terrifying. Chu Feng felt a chill run down his spine. What had happened in the end? What terrifying and strange thing had appeared and grabbed him in the process of taking the time furnace? Why didn't he feel anything at that time? Chu Feng was a bit scared. He had just come into contact with that strange furnace and such a thing had happened. One could imagine how terrifying it would be to wear it for a long time. He withdrew his hand from the stone jar. In the end, he discovered that it was still as lustrous as jade. It was slender and flawless. It was very beautiful and there was nothing strange about it. Only in the stone jar could it be reflected. As expected, he put his hand in again and the black fingerprints appeared again. Moreover, after he touched the reincarnation soil in the stone jar, he discovered a certain terrifying scene and heard some faint sounds. On his finger, there was an inexplicable substance dispersing from the black fingerprint. It was somewhat demonic and faint, but he could clearly capture it. Chu Feng discovered that the place where his finger touched the time furnace was evaporating the inexplicable substance. He couldn't see anything outside the stone jar, but he could have such an experience inside. It was too strange and made him shudder. Upon careful observation, it was a layer of pure white mist. It looked holy and ethereal, but it was also frightening. It was constantly evaporating from the black mark at the tip of his finger. Then, the substance that was evaporating inexplicably dispersed in the stone jar. Especially after coming into contact with the reincarnation soil, it was completely obliterated. What was this? He was astonished. At the same time, he felt that there was a great way. He immediately thought of some things. Gu Chenhai's big brother, Li Su, had once searched the world for soul flesh and used underhanded means. Could it be because of the time furnace? That couldn't be right. Li Su had started to search for soul flesh a long time ago. At that time, he shouldn't have fished out the time furnace from the sky-high waterfall. Suddenly, a blurry scene appeared in the stone jar. It originated from the substance evaporating from Chu Feng's finger. At the same time, the originally faint sound became stronger. He could gradually hear it. It was a cold, rigid, merciless, and mechanical sound. It was like some ancient ritual was being carried out. Chapter 11:26. Chu Feng remained motionless as he carefully listened. This was a bit frightening. He had only been looking at the time furnace, but he had actually heard such a sound. In particular, the deep black finger marks on his hand were too strange. They made his hair stand on end, as if he had been clawed by a malicious spirit. But he hadn't felt anything before. He hadn't sensed anything at all, and could only appear in the stone jar. This made him feel uneasy. Of course, what he was most concerned about was this sound. What was it trying to express? The heavens cannot bury those, bury them in the four extremes of the floating earth. Cut down the yin and yang firewood, draw in the flames of the great void, receive the flames of the ancient universe, burn. These words continued several times. Moreover, a blurry and hazy figure appeared. It was a living being that couldn't be seen clearly, but one could see that it was covered in some kind of earth, and that there were flames rising from it. The more it burned, the more resplendent it became and the more divine it became. It seemed to shine with an eternal brilliance. Chu Feng remained motionless as he watched. But that so-called resplendence only flashed by. He wanted to capture the living being at the center, but he couldn't. It was too dazzling. His spiritual force wasn't strong enough to approach. Even the fiery eyes weren't enough. He couldn't look straight at it and couldn't discover the finer details. His pupils were in intense pain. There was no sound. He couldn't see the flames and the living being either. They had all disappeared and the stone jar returned to its tranquil state. Chu Feng woke up and looked at his right hand. The black finger marks had all disappeared, as if they had been cleanly purified and erased. Strange and terrifying. What the hell is going on? Chu Feng began to ponder in his mind. In particular, those words had left an indelible impression on him. This seemed to be very important. The four extremes of the floating earth, is it a special type of earth, or is it one of the four extremes of unfathomable earth? Or is it produced from the four extremes? Chu Feng had too many questions in his heart. Yin and yang firewood, are they real? Or are they illusory? Are they actually referring to yin and yang? He pondered each sentence, considering the meaning of these words. There seemed to be an inexplicable power within. Was it to create a person or destroy a person? It was clear that whether it was the flames of the Great Void or the ancient cosmic flames, they were the main types of energy used to burn. These two types of flames were likely extremely rare and precious. At the very least, Chu Feng had never heard of such a thing before. Chu Feng lifted his right hand that had erased the black mark from the stone jar. Afterwards, he glanced at his left hand. It was spotlessly white and slender. Then, he reached into the stone jar of reincarnation soil. Sure enough, black fingerprints also appeared on this hand. This hand had also touched the time furnace. However, the fingerprints on his left hand were slightly fainter and not as frighteningly black. Chu Feng was surprised. Was there a difference? The two hands had touched the small furnace for about the same amount of time, so it shouldn't be like this. He pondered for a moment. Could it be that the black fingerprints on his left hand were slowly disappearing by themselves when he had left it outside? It didn't necessarily need the samsara earth to erase them? Yes, that should be the case. Chu Feng nodded and guessed. According to the legends, for those that came into contact with the time furnace throughout the ages, as long as it was for a short period of time and didn't exceed a certain period of time, no ominous events would occur and they wouldn't be harmed. At this time, the indifferent, mechanical, inflexible, and emotionless voice sounded out from the stone jar once more, repeating the words spoken not too long ago. At the same time, Chu Feng also saw a living being buried in the floating earth and then burning. Then, a divine light shined down, as if it wanted to tear apart the eternal night and transcend beyond, truly lofty and lofty. Soon, the black fingerprints on Chu Feng's left hand faded away before being completely erased. That strange voice and scenery also vanished. Old Gu, have you heard of the four extremes floating earth? Chu Feng asked. What is that? Gu Chunhai was flabbergasted. What the hell was this? He had never heard of it before. This also meant that he hadn't heard the voice from the stone jar just now. Even at such a close distance, he hadn't sensed anything at all, so he didn't know what sort of terrifying event had occurred. Yin and Yang, the two firewoods. You should have heard of them, right? Chu Feng asked again. Moreover, it was as if it was a matter of course that he should have heard of them. Old Gu's face flushed red because he really hadn't heard of such a saying. He feigned disdain and said, firewood. What yin and yang are you talking about? You're just pretending to be fastidious and pretentious. Chu Feng asked again, flames of the grand sky, flames of ancient Ian. Can this kind of fire be ranked first and second in the universe? Can it be called supreme in the yang realm? Little thief, you dare to spout nonsense after making up a few terms? Do you really think I'm an idiot? Go play with the mud on the side, don't try to fool this old man. Old Gu put on an air of contempt as if he had seen through Chu Feng. In truth, he flew into a rage out of humiliation. He didn't know a single one of these messy names, and had never heard of them before. Chu Feng shivered and was greatly shaken in his heart. Even an old demon like Old Gu who had survived from prehistory didn't know about these terms and had never heard of them before. It seemed that they weren't simple at all. It would probably be abnormally difficult to find them. He faintly felt that the implications of this were far too great. For a time, all sorts of thoughts raced through his mind. Was the so-called four extremes floating earth the earth of the soul and flesh? After all, Li Su had once searched the entire world for it. Of course, what Chu Feng believed to be the most serious matter was also the most terrifying matter. This was the general meaning of these words. Was this a method of calcining one's self and refining a body that couldn't be buried by the heavens? Or was it the complete opposite meaning? If this was a mnemonic chant, an ultimate body refining method, then it would absolutely be priceless. If one could cultivate a body that couldn't be buried by the heavens, then in this world, including reincarnation, who could destroy it? From what I can see, that life form seems to be lying there on its own initiative and then being incinerated? Chu Feng pondered. Could this really be an ultimate law, a transcendent body refining scripture? As long as one could find those items, they would be able to form an invincible body through all ages? Chu Feng pondered, feeling that this really did seem like a secret passage. What was even more interesting was that it was in line with the Great Tao's simplicity. It was just this passage. But if one thinks about it from another direction, then this passage is a bit scary. Chu Feng pondered inwardly. The heavens can't be buried, drowned in the four extremes floating earth. Cut the yin and yang to firewood. This passage could be understood as how to cultivate that kind of unparalleled body. However, it could also be understood as a step-by-step process. It was to destroy the heavens can't be buried by the heavens, using the materials behind to destroy the heavens can't be buried by the heavens. If one understood it this way, then this wasn't a body cultivation method, but rather body incineration. It was burning a type of ultimate corpse. Chu Feng couldn't help but wipe his forehead. There really was a bit of cold sweat. If one thought about it this way, then that furnace of time was actually a corpse incineration furnace. When he thought of this possibility, his entire body felt uncomfortable. Just how inauspicious was this thing? So many people still wanted to fight over it, and he had even touched it before, holding it in his hands and stroking it. Chu Feng couldn't help but break out into a cold shiver. He always felt that touching something that seemed to be a corpse incineration furnace like that was extremely disgusting. At this time, he rubbed his hands with all his might, wishing he could rub off a layer of skin. It really might be a corpse incineration furnace. The more Chu Feng thought about it, the more he felt that there was a great possibility. At the very least, this furnace itself was inauspicious. Throughout history, all those who possessed it, those who wore it for a long period of time, all of them died. Moreover, not long ago, he personally experienced the terrifying black fingerprints that appeared on his hand. It really was like seeing a living ghost. Apart from this, that emotionless, cold, mechanical, and old-fashioned voice also seemed to be carrying out some kind of ceremony. Was this the so-called burial ground of great figures? He really felt uncomfortable inside, his body feeling as if a group of ants was crawling over it. Chu Feng was extremely disgusted, flinging his hands with all his might, really wishing he could jump into a great river to wash away his body. In the end, Chu Feng sighed and said, "Actually, if we look into it deeply, this is still a body-tempering technique in the end. If it was a mnemonic chant or a kind of secret inheritance, then there was no need to mention it. If it was a corpse incineration furnace, then it was some kind of ritual to destroy the corpse of a powerhouse, and the conditions needed to be met. This also meant that this was a relatively shocking method. If there really was someone who could use this process to temper their body and forcefully resist it, then they would definitely be able to transcend and become completely high and mighty. Of course, if it was the latter case, then it would definitely have to be done step by step. It was impossible to burn oneself fiercely right from the start, but rather simmer over a small fire and gradually adapt. Tempering the great body is like cooking a small fish. Bah! When he said the last sentence, even he himself felt disgusted. Thinking about it this way, that sentence was very important. If this road could really be walked, then it was really possible to achieve an undefeated body through the ages. Chu Feng came back again, wanting to consider it again. There were many people near the time furnace, and they were divided into groups according to their age and the closeness of each race. For example, there were many people at the place where the young girl who looked like Linoy was. All of them were young talents who came from some extremely powerful evolutionary races and were all well known. It could be seen that even the young girl who looked like Linoy was very polite to them. From this, one could tell that some of these people had very high statuses and great origins. At the very least, Chu Feng could see that there were men in the form of divine birds and women in the form of vicious beasts among them. All of them were extraordinary. There's actually an evolver with a golden crow. Is he pure-blooded? And there's also a woman in the form of a white tiger. It's a little shocking. Chu Feng was astonished. That golden crow youth seemed to be a top young character in his race. Many people surrounded him, and his whole body was shining with golden light. He was wearing a golden feather robe and had a heroic bearing. On the other side, Ing Wudi had arrived. This time, Chu Feng finally discovered that his face wasn't black and was fair and clean. Chu Feng felt a bit of a toothache. When he was with the Ing sisters in the past, Ing Wudi's face would easily turn black at every turn. This symptom was actually gone now. However, he quickly discovered that he was thinking too much. After a group of people surrounded Ing Zhixian, stunned by her beauty and tried to worm their way into being friends with her, Ing Wudi's face decisively turned black again. This group of people really wasn't to be trifled with. Even the quasi-immortal race might not be able to suppress them all. Some of the youths had extremely astonishing origins. For example, there was a red-haired youth in his 20s who was the focus of many people. He was actually a human from the alien wasteland. According to legend, this race possessed extraordinary innate gift. When their primogenitor broke away from the human race and established a race of his own, he achieved great merits and passed on the innate purplish-red heavenly blood to all his descendants. There were also some groups nearby, and all of them were powerful young experts. They had their own small circles and were chatting happily. There was no doubt that some of them were the center of attention and were being complimented. They were indeed dazzling, powerful, and had deep backgrounds. For example, the white-clothed Buddha from the Buddhist race had a halo behind his head and was extraordinary and refined. Other than that, there were some clans that had been passed down from prehistoric times to the present and had always been prosperous. They had actually appeared as their descendants rushed over. The men were handsome and the women were extremely beautiful. All of them became the focus of attention. Chu Feng didn't go over and instead queued up again. Even though it was very disgusting, he still wanted to weigh the time furnace again and investigate it in detail. He wanted to try and see if he could hear another voice if he held it for a while longer. He really wanted to refine an undefeated body through the ages. Even though he knew this was an extravagant wish, how could he reject everything if he didn't try? In any case, he had the reincarnation Earth and wasn't afraid of being entangled by the inauspicious. Upon closer inspection, there weren't many people near the time furnace. They were all old fellows and the other youths had all avoided them. "There's really someone who isn't afraid of death?" someone said with a chuckle. He gestured to this side and said, "There's an idiot who went over again." For a moment, everyone's gazes converged over. At this time, the girl who looked like Linoy said, "This time furnace is inauspicious. After coming into contact with it, you should meditate as soon as possible and circulate your breathing technique to expel all the energy in your body and gather it again. Moreover, it's best not to come into contact with it a second time." She had just said this to some people in private just now and the people nearby more or less knew about it. At this time, she reminded Chu Feng. Chapter 11:27. Are you calling me? Even though the youth on the other side had a smile on his face, there was a bit of sharpness in his words. even more so a type of pressure. His silver-white battle clothes flowed with brilliant colors, extremely valiant. His age wasn't great, black hair and black eyes, full of vigor, looking 13 or 14 years old. Right now, the blood within his body surged, unexpectedly surging like a great sea, carrying thunderous sounds. In that instant, an astonishing aura surged from his body. Even though he was young, he already gave his peers a terrifying feeling of pressure, golden light flickering about his body. Top-grade golden body! A few people sighed in admiration, all of them able to see that this youth was formidable, cultivating the golden body domain's extraordinary golden body. Normal clans youngsters couldn't cultivate this at all. His golden body carried purple light, also known as the purple golden body. Evolving this type of golden body was known as the path to becoming an Empyrean. This was the foundation for becoming an Empyrean or even greater being. With this golden body, one's future path would be extremely smooth. Only 13 or 14 years old, yet he already cultivated the purple golden body. The younger generation will surpass us in time. This is Shi family's child, named Shi Huang, an outstanding talent of this generation's nurturing. Someone said softly, recognizing his identity. Shi Huang had a faint smile on his face as he walked over. However, there was a bit of coldness in the depths of his eyes. There aren't many who dare speak to me like this. Then I will definitely be one of them. Chu Feng was also smiling, not treating this as a big deal. Everyone in the younger generation looked over, staring at these two. A few people knew Shi Huang's identity. This clan was deep and immeasurable, passed down from the prehistoric era, never extinguished, and could be considered to have flourished for a long time. This was especially the case in recent years when an old ancestor of Shi family came out from seclusion, triggering a huge commotion. That old ancestor was someone from the prehistoric era, yet he actually didn't die. Just how powerful was he now? The level of his evolution was immeasurable. When the outside world learned of this, especially Shi family's enemies, they all became silent, not daring to compete with them anymore, thus withdrawing. Now, Shi family was like the midday sun, playing an important role in the Yang realm. It was a powerful family with roots and history. I've underestimated you. You have some guts, a loose cultivator actually daring to speak to me like this. Not bad. Shi Huang nodded. His silver-white battle clothes shone, his body tall and sturdy, heroic and vigorous. Chu Feng was stunned. He could even tell that he was a rogue cultivator? He pondered for a moment and immediately understood. Just now, everyone was contacting their respective clans and sects to inform them about the time furnace. Only he was in a daze at the side and didn't do so. Chu Feng was surprised. This Shi Huang was truly meticulous. There were so many people in front of the Heavenly Path Immortal Waterfall, yet he could still notice the actions of a rogue cultivator. I'm here. What can you do to me? Shi Huang approached, his steps majestic and imposing. There were a few people following behind him. If they weren't the young masters of clans, then they were the core inheritors of sections. They surrounded him, all of their statuses extraordinary, yet they surrounded him like the moon. In comparison, Chu Feng's side was too shabby. He was alone and weak, with only a donkey spirit who had transformed into a youth following him. He listened to Chu Feng's warning and kept silent, not saying a word. Not far away, Zhong Xiu, Ing Zhixian, the white-robed Buddha, Emperor Peng, and the others all looked over. That's enough. You can go back the way you came. Chu Feng waved his hand with an impatient look on his face. What did you say? Shi Huang revealed a cold expression. Was he making fun of him? Who dared to order him around? He was purely making fun of him. Rumble. Shi Huang erupted, and his purple-golden body became increasingly resplendent. He revealed a faint killing intent and said, "A rogue cultivator dares to speak nonsense to me." He approached Chu Feng with an arrogant expression. He wanted to suppress him if he didn't agree with him. Enough. Hurry up and stay at the side. I don't have time to play with you. Chu Feng was impatient. It was his turn soon. The time furnace was placed on the stone table in front of him. How can you say that? You're so insolent that you're stupid. Before Shi Huang could speak, some of the evolvers who followed him couldn't bear it anymore. Shut up, Chu Feng said. Then, he moved as fast as lightning. He directly grabbed the time furnace and decisively slapped it into Shi Huang's hand. The other party had already closed in and was looking down on him. Oh my God! The people who followed him were all shocked and immediately retreated. They were extremely afraid of this furnace and didn't want to touch it again. Damn you! Shi Huang was disgusted and his hair stood on end. It would have been fine if he didn't know what this thing was like. But now, he completely understood. Moreover, there was someone specifically reminding him not to touch it a second time. He almost threw the time furnace, but he couldn't have stage fright in front of so many people. However, Chu Feng instantly took the time furnace from his hand and held it in his own hand again. Shi Huang felt relieved and cooperatively returned it to him. The first time it was stuffed into his hand, he was careless and the other party took advantage of a loophole. This time, it was under his control and he just happened to have a way out of this situation. He didn't want to hold this ominous furnace. However, Chu Feng's words made him a little angry. Okay, let's go back the way we came. Although these words didn't contain any anger, when he connected them together, he was teasing Shi Huang. He called him over and then waved his hand to send him away. How could this be? Shi Huang was furious. His purple-gold body erupted, and the blood in his body flowed like thunder. His entire body shone brightly. Even some of the young adults were surprised. They secretly thought about how they were at this age and felt that they couldn't compare to Shi Huang. Those who could come here all had extraordinary identities, and many of these people believed that they could not compare to the Shi clan's disciple who had the purple golden body when they were young, so one could imagine his talent and strength. Chu Feng only had one action, and that was to bring out the time furnace and attack Shi Huang. You! Shi Huang acted like he was avoiding a snake or a scorpion. He immediately flew away from that place. Chu Feng didn't say anything and continued to watch the time furnace. Haha! For a moment everyone laughed. Many people realized that this rogue cultivator had played a trick on Shi Huang. He called him over and then asked him to leave, letting his opponent do as he said. Kill him! Shi Huang yelled. Behind him, two people suddenly stood up. They were the god-level evolvers of the clan who had escorted him to this place. The two immediately strode over. With a clang, one of them directly pulled out a divine sword. The snow-white light illuminated the place, and the energy of gods filled the air. Many people's expressions changed. In this place, rogue cultivators were really like clay chickens and pottery dogs. Under the law of the jungle, they couldn't compete with the children of aristocratic families at all, and they didn't have a protector. You're angry out of humiliation and directly sent a god to kill me? Chu Feng's eyes were cold. In the Yang realm, the suppression of the order of heaven and earth was very strong. In some large provinces, even gods couldn't leave the ground and couldn't fly in the sky or escape the earth. Therefore, it was difficult for those two people to show the terrifying aura of gods that could suppress the galaxy in the Lesser Een realm. Otherwise, if the gods were to move in the Lesser Een realm, Chu Feng would be suppressed by that aura and be unable to move if he didn't use the Tao fruit of his previous life. He would explode instantly. Now, he could still open his mouth and speak coldly. Young man, you're very naive. You've come to the wrong place. How dare you speak nonsense here? You don't even know how the word death is written. A mere rogue cultivator dares to be disrespectful to the core children of the prehistoric aristocratic families and speak impudently. Let me tell you how to be respectful. The two gods both raised their sharp swords. One wanted to kill him, and the other wanted to cut him in half at the waist and torture him first. Two lightning-like sword lights slashed over with a terrifying murderous aura. Strictly speaking, it was too wasteful to kill a youth at the golden body level like this. It was like using a dragon-slaying saber to kill a lamb. Everything was because the Sure family youth had lost face. The clan expressed its stance and warned the evolvers present that the Sure family couldn't be offended. Some people sighed in pity. This rogue cultivator youth really died a little unjustly. Of course, there were also many people, such as the group of young experts following Shi Huang, who revealed cold smiles. Is there still justice in this world? As Chu Feng spoke, he swung his sleeves and fiercely slapped out, "A brick. What is justice? My Sure family is justice." The two gods sneered one after another. "Look at my sky-flipping seal!" Chu Feng shouted, not hiding anything at all. Clang! Clang! Sparks flew in all directions. The two divine swords were both smashed into pieces, and all the murderous aura was dispersed. After the two swords fell to the ground, they turned into scrap metal and shattered on the ground, their luster dim. Those who dare to become enemies with my Sure family deserve to die. Not far away, there were still people whispering behind Shi Huang, but they suddenly stopped. "You dare?" The two gods were even more shocked. They realized that they had touched an iron plate. Using the body of a god to deal with a youth, they actually had to face a calamity? Why wouldn't this young master dare? "Look at my ancient sky-flipping seal." Chu Feng swung the brick again and directly threw it out. Old Gu cursed in his heart. This was using his shrunken coffin as a weapon. Although they had an agreement, he was still unhappy. However, he didn't slack off and cooperated very well. With two puffs, the sky-flipping seal automatically attacked, smashing the two gods who wanted to escape into meat paste. Not a single one escaped, and they all died. At the same time, Chu Feng followed up. Grabbing the brick that had flown back, he rushed towards Shi Huang. "You!" Shi Huang was shocked and angry. "Look at my brick, no sky-flipping seal!" Chu Feng shouted and began to smash out the shrunken coffin again. "Do you dare to fight me fairly?" Shi Huang shouted. As he spoke, he produced a secret treasure. The void flowed with colorful lights, and all kinds of flying swords, bronze bells, and mysterious golden pagodas were arranged here. These were all the highest-level weapons he could use, and they blocked Chu Feng and the sky-flipping seal. "Don't you feel shameless and shameless? You've already made a god attack me, and you still have the nerve to talk about a fair fight?" Chu Feng laughed coldly. After the brick left his hand, all the weapons in front of him exploded. Moreover, the sky-flipping seal instantly floated above Shi Huang's head, suppressing and imprisoning him. Chu Feng rushed over, kicked him over, and quickly sealed him. He then grabbed him by the collar and captured him alive. Taking the head of a young master from an army of thousands is as easy as taking something out of my pocket. I'm really a heaven-warping genius. Chu Feng sighed. The events that happened in an instant were dazzling. Shi Huang was actually captured, and two gods were killed. That young rogue cultivator was selling melons in front of Grandma Wang, and it made people speechless. In the dark, Chu Feng asked Gu Chenhai, "Old Gu, is what you said just now reliable?" "Yes, as long as you do business with that organization, they'll be responsible for your safety," Gu Chenhai replied. Not long ago, Chu Feng had a short discussion with old Gu about whether he should swallow the humiliation here and keep a low profile to ensure his safety. But that wasn't his style, and he didn't want to be humiliated. Old Gu told him to buy Grandma Meng's soup. As long as he did business with this organization, he would be safe here at the heavenly immortal waterfall. Therefore, Chu Feng acted quite straightforwardly and didn't keep a low profile at all. He rushed to the middle-aged woman selling the time furnace and said, "Senior, I have business to do with you. Make sure I don't get killed first." This woman came from the same organization as the old woman who was selling Grandma Meng's soup. No problem, those who do business with us always live very comfortably. The middle-aged woman smiled. Chu Feng was afraid that he would be killed on the way to buy Grandma Meng's soup. He was worried that old Gu wouldn't be able to handle it alone. After all, there were definitely many god kings here. Now that the middle-aged woman expressed her stance, the expressions of some people changed. The people who wanted to make a move had ugly expressions. They all felt that they had underestimated this rogue cultivator too much. He knew a lot of things and actually understood the rules of that organization. "Little thief, do you want to live or die?" Chu Feng shouted at Shi Huang. "You're courting death." Shi Huang was unconvinced. He didn't believe that Chu Feng would dare to kill him. But Chu Feng didn't say anything and gave him a big slap on the face, causing blood to flow out of his mouth and nose. Moreover, he held the heaven-overturning seal and was about to slap it down. "Show mercy, don't kill him!" In the distance, someone shouted. He finally couldn't keep his cool and couldn't sit still anymore. That person was a God King level Tao protector. The core descendant of such a powerful race was a genius youth who was almost equivalent to a young lord. If he traveled like this, he would naturally have the protection of a God King. Chu Feng nodded and said, "Sure, help me pay for 8 to 10 bowls of Grandma Meng's soup." "Why don't you just rob someone?" Someone was angry. Chapter 11:28. Shi Huang was unable to restrain his anger after hearing Chu Feng's words. This was going too far. This wandering cultivator had smashed his head with a brick and even threatened to rob him. It was truly infuriating. As for the divine king in the dark, he was also speechless. The Shi clan was so powerful that they had survived since the most ancient times. They had endured the most difficult times and experienced the dark period when cultivators were almost extinct. Now, their clan was flourishing, yet someone actually dared to rob them? The others were also stunned and tongue-tied. All of them revealed astonished expressions as they looked towards Chu Feng. The dark-faced Ing Wudi, the pale-faced young Buddha, the immortal Ing Zhixian, and the elegant Linoy girl. The group looked at each other speechlessly. This matter was a bit outrageous. A wandering cultivator was robbing the Shi clan's young master and a divine king in public. "Little brother, don't be agitated. Be careful of careless talk." Finally, the divine king spoke again. Bang! In the end, Chu Feng directly smashed Shi Huang's head, causing him to see stars and bleed. He was so angry that he wanted to stomp his feet and curse at the intolerable bullying. "Try threatening me again," Chu Feng shouted at the divine king. He was fairly impolite and wasn't afraid in the slightest. The divine king approached silently from a distance. He didn't reveal his whereabouts and wanted to deal a fatal blow to Chu Feng. He was still trying to calm Chu Feng down. "Little friend, your actions aren't showing enough respect to the Shi clan. I suggest you carefully understand our clan. If you want to go far on the path of evolution, there are some people, sects, and aristocratic families that you need to revere." The divine king's words were neither salty nor indifferent. He was somewhat confident and confident. "Try threatening me again if you have the guts." Chu Feng was fearless and didn't seem to believe in heresy. Moreover, he was fairly direct. With a bang, he smashed Shi Huang's head violently. This made Shi Huang want to cry. For a moment, his head was covered in blood and he felt dizzy. "Stop!" The divine king was furious. He was approaching, but he felt a bit uneasy when he saw the middle-aged woman selling the time furnace. He berated, "Young man, don't make a mistake." Bang! Chu Feng didn't say a word and started to knock on Shi Huang's head again. That time, he really wanted to smash a big hole in Shi Huang's head. Blood spurted out and it was quite a miserable scene. F***ck, I can't take it anymore. The God King is threatening you. Why do you keep hitting my head? Go hit the God King! Shi Huang shouted. He was humiliated, angry, pained, and depressed. His head was about to split open. He was really afraid that Chu Feng would smash his head into a rotten watermelon. Fellow Taoist, actually, our Shi clan would also like to buy Granny Meng's soup. Finally, the God King no longer paid attention to Chu Feng and started negotiating with the people from that organization. He then looked at the middle-aged woman selling the time furnace. Without a doubt, this was his trump card. He wanted to use this organization to protect Shi Huang. Chu Feng shuddered. The other party was taking drastic measures to make him lose his protection? Could they count on old Gu to kill his way out? Gu Chenhai secretly transmitted his voice and said, "Don't be afraid. This organization is still very particular. They won't push away the previous customers just because someone else wants to buy something. In particular, the things sold by this organization were too expensive. Not to mention the time furnace, even the Granny Meng's soup was frighteningly expensive. One tael of mother gold for a bowl of soup was really outrageous." Cough. Chu Feng spoke first. "Senior, don't listen to his nonsense. He's just talking nonsense. He might say he wants to buy it, but can he really put it into action? I don't believe he has mother gold on him." That God King looked like a middle-aged man. His black hair was loose, and he looked very heroic. He said, "Young man, don't use your ignorance to estimate the depths of the Shi clan. It's just mother gold. The Shi clan can take it out. Wanting to buy Granny Meng's soup is nothing. Do you know how to speak human language?" Chu Feng cast him a sidelong glance and then began to beat Shi Huang's head. The latter was so angry that he was trembling all over. His head was covered in blood and he was about to faint. Shi Huang wanted to resist and fight to the death with Chu Feng. However, after seeing the brick in his hand that could easily kill a god, he hesitated and his body stiffened. Chu Feng said again, "Who doesn't know how to talk big? If you have the guts, take out a few taels of mother gold and let me have a look." The Shi clan's God King was momentarily speechless. Who would carry mother gold around for no reason? That thing was too rare. Even his secret treasures didn't have the chance to integrate a trace of it. This kind of strategic material would be melted into the clan's guardian weapon. Chu Feng feigned disdain and said, "How about it? You don't have mother gold, do you? What Shi clan? What immortal inheritance? They're all just for show, just bragging." The Shi clan's God King said with a gloomy expression, "A mere wandering cultivator dares to boast shamelessly. You keep saying you want to buy Granny Meng's soup. I'll wait and see how you're going to buy it. Do you think you're worthy of taking out mother gold? If you can't complete the transaction, you'll be lying and making trouble out of nothing. I believe this Tao friend won't let you off." He looked at the middle-aged woman who was selling the time furnace and reminded her that a wandering cultivator like Chu Feng couldn't afford it. He was making trouble out of nothing. The middle-aged woman looked at Chu Feng with a profound gaze and a strange expression on her face. There was a hint of inquiry and warning in her eyes. Seeing this, Chu Feng immediately patted his chest and said, "Buying Granny Meng's soup is nothing. The Shi clan is so pitiful. They don't even have mother gold. They can't even compare to a wandering cultivator like me. Please call me God Tycoon. This young master is rich and imposing. Go buy it if you have the gut. What are you bragging about?" Shi Huang couldn't hold it in anymore. The God King's expression also sank as he stared at him. This youth really didn't know the difference between life and death. He was being unreasonable to the Shi clan time and time again, putting them on the spot. He was destined to be killed without mercy. Chu Feng first smashed Shi Huang's head until it bled and became dizzy. Then, he dragged him to the stone arch bridge in an ostentatious manner to buy soup. He secretly asked, "Old Gu, I want to buy a bowl of soup, but I'm afraid something will happen if I drink it directly. Is the soup sold by this old woman reliable?" Gu Chenhai replied, Don't worry, it's absolutely reliable. The soup is pure and the medicinal effects are mellow. The credibility of the person who runs this business is guaranteed. When Chu Feng heard this, he immediately had a plan. Auntie, give me 2 taels of Granny Meng's soup, said Chu Feng. When everyone heard this, their expressions became strange. This youth really dared to ask for 2 taels of mother gold. He wanted to buy 2 bowls of Granny Meng's soup? What a joke! Do you have it? I don't believe that a wandering cultivator can really buy 2 bowls of rare tonic. Someone sneered. It wasn't just the Shi clan. Even the others felt that it was outrageous. Even they weren't so extravagant and couldn't take out mother gold. How could a youth do it? Heh heh. The Shi clan's godly monarch sneered. Emperor Rock, the young girl who resembled Linoi, Zhong Xiu, Ying Zhixian, and the other youths were very surprised. Some people had already walked close to observe. How was this young itinerant cultivator going to deal with the aftermath? I was wrong. I want 1 kilogram of Granny Meng's soup. Chu Feng handed over 2 small pieces of sky gold stone. This thing was actually quite heavy, so it didn't look big. He had asked when he first arrived. 1 kilogram of sky gold stone could be exchanged for a bowl of Granny Meng's soup. Thinking about it carefully, Old Gu's coffin was impressive. It could be considered a huge fortune. Back then, Old Gu was a typical nouveau riche. The group of people was shocked. Did this kid really take out natural treasures? Chu Feng smiled and slapped Shi Huang before saying, I don't have anything else, but compared to the Shi clan, I'm rich and overbearing. He wasn't afraid of being targeted. In any case, he would run away after completing his mission. It was a one-off deal. This made Old Gu very unhappy. He was using his coffin to squander so generously. He was too shameless. Then, Old Gu watched eagerly and endured his anger. After all, Chu Feng had successfully bought 2 bowls instead of 1. He reckoned that he would be given 1 bowl. However, he nearly stomped his feet in anger. Chu Feng kept 1 bowl for himself and handed the other bowl to the donkey spirit. The Manchurian tiger had been silent the entire time. It was Chu Feng's request. After coming here, he didn't say a word and just followed by his side. Brother, you're so loyal. Now, the Manchurian tiger was extremely happy. He finally couldn't help but speak. He grinned, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. Little thief, you used my coffin to buy Granny Meng's soup, but in the end, I didn't even get to drink a drop. Old Gu gritted his teeth and was about to explode. Aren't you in a coffin? All right, I'll buy another bowl for you, he replied secretly. Following that, Chu Feng bought another bowl of soup and said, Auntie, another kilogram of Granny Meng's soup. The group of people was speechless and stared blankly. Then, under everyone's shocked gazes, they saw this wastrel pour out a bowl of soup and pour it over his broken brick. Shi clan members, what are you looking at? We don't have anything else, but we're rich and overbearing. This is how we drink Granny Meng's soup. Buy 2 bowls, drink 1, pour the other. Chu Feng said smugly. The Shi clan group was furious. Even they couldn't take out heavenly materials such as mother gold and Granny Meng's stone, yet a small itinerant cultivator was so high profile. They were so angry that they couldn't say anything. In fact, Old Gu could consume it and use the Granny Meng's stone to absorb the juice without wasting the medicinal properties. After all, he could emit his blood energy normally. Senior, do you accept an IOU? Chu Feng asked in a low voice as he discussed with the old woman selling the soup. Considering your current good record, I can consider it, but you have to buy at least 4 bowls yourself. Sure, no problem. 1 more bowl, that's enough, Chu Feng said. Then, Chu Feng looked at the Shi clan's divine king and said, Write an IOU. Your clan owes me 6 taels of mother gold. What do you mean? The Shi clan's divine king said coldly. I've kidnapped your young master. If he doesn't give it to me, I'll chop him to death. Chu Feng shouted. Everyone was speechless. After going around in a big circle and challenging for a fight for so long, it was finally back to robbery. This is extortion, provocation, and making an enemy of the Sher clan, the Divine King said coldly. That's right, you're right. But there's a precondition. You provoked me first and even wanted to kill me. This is the price you have to pay for kicking an iron plate. Chu Feng didn't want to talk nonsense with him, and issued a final ultimatum. If he didn't give it to him, he would chop him to death. The Sher clan's Divine King was furious. Sher Huang, on the other hand, was extremely uneasy. He could feel the threat of death. This young man wasn't just talking. He was really going to smack him to death with the so-called heaven-overturning seal. Fine, my Sher clan accepts, but I can only write you an IOU of 5 taels of mother gold. Deal, write it. Chu Feng agreed happily and said, generous enough, right? I won't even bargain for you. Little beast. The Sher clan's Divine King wanted to curse out loud, but he held back in the end. His lips were trembling and his face was ashen. Auntie, will you accept this IOU? Chu Feng asked. No problem, the Sher clan is still very trustworthy. We can accept it. The Sher clan's Divine King was furious. To hell with trustworthiness. Wasn't it because their organization was too powerful, and they weren't afraid of people going back on their word? The old woman on the bridge frowned and said, My apologies, we have a total of 8 bowls of Granny Meng's soup. You've already bought half of them, so there are 4 left. The IOU you gave us is only left with 1 tael of mother gold. Chu Feng heard this and asked, Is there anything else? I'll buy some. There is. Other than the furnace of time, you can choose any of the other items. Not far away, the middle-aged woman spoke. She was no longer indifferent and revealed a smile on her face. They liked buyers like Chu Feng the most. Chu Feng was happy and said, All right, I just happen to be lacking an item fished out from the heavenly waterfall. Now that I've gathered it, I can enter the waterfall for seclusion. He had already heard from old Gu that holding an item from the heavenly waterfall and entering seclusion within the waterfall would yield twice the results with half the effort. It would have miraculous effects. The young girl resembling Linoy, the young Buddha, the Wind Phoenix Fairy, Zhong Xiu, and Ing Zhixian were all speechless. What had happened here was a little ridiculous. Chapter 11:29. The ground was littered with old objects, ranging from armors to lampstands to magnetic marrow lotus roots. There were quite a few good things here, and Chu Feng was dazzled by the number of them. He knew that this was a test of his eyesight. 90% of the items here were probably fake. For instance, the heavenly flame fan that seemed to be woven from the feathers of the golden crow looked astonishing. From time to time, an indistinct 3-legged divine bird would appear and disappear amidst the waves of heat. But was this real? Chu Feng was somewhat tempted by some of the items after some observation. For instance, that magnetic marrow lotus root was a favorite of domain researchers. Afterward, he used the fiery eyes to observe carefully and found a few broken flags among the pile of scrap metal. They were all small, less than a foot in length, and their luster was dim. But his fiery eyes could see their insides. For instance, the earthy yellow flag wasn't simple. There was also a dark red flag with dancing flames. Chu Feng was astonished. Why did it seem that 90% of them were rare and extraordinary items? He reckoned that this was definitely a highly skilled faker. As expected, some of the objects had strange phenomena, but only a small part of them appeared. Most of the objects were fake and were forged together. Little friend, have you chosen a satisfactory heavenly object? These things are all fished out from the sky-piercing waterfall. It's time-consuming and laborious, and every item is stained with the blood of experts. It's too difficult to fish things out from the immortal waterfall. The middle-aged woman from the organization spoke without a smile. Let me take a look, said Chu Feng. More and more people arrived in the vicinity. Many powerful races and evolver sects had arrived after receiving reports from their genius disciples. All of them were experts with frighteningly high statuses. Even existences in the eyes of primal chaos were apprehensive of them. They came out to greet some special beings. For instance, the people from the Buddhist race had arrived. That was a stone Buddha. His skin was petrified like a statue, but he could still move with a sorrowful expression on his face. Who is this? Don't the Buddhist race have flesh and blood bodies? Why is there a stone Buddha here? Shoo, this is a true Buddha. Back then, when he competed with his clansmen for the position of the future Buddha Lord, he almost succeeded. If it wasn't for the other person being too outstanding, then the position would have belonged to him. Everyone felt apprehensive in their hearts when they heard this. How formidable was the Buddhist clan! They'd always been ranked in the top 5 in the Yang realm, and their position hadn't wavered since the ancient times. This stone Buddha had almost become the future Buddha Lord. With such an identity, his strength was definitely unfathomable, causing others to have no choice but to respect him. The white-robed Arhat immediately went forward with a respectful expression and bowed to him to show his respect. Other than that, there were 2 more sons of Buddha. One of them wore a golden robe, and even his skin was golden, as if he was forged from gold. The other was dressed in black, and the Buddhist light behind his head shone brightly, giving him an extraordinary appearance. The Buddhist race is extremely powerful and has already supported that hegemon of the West. Not long ago, they even fought a fierce battle with a commander sent out by Yongzhou. It was truly earth-shattering. Some people were discussing with solemn expressions. Now that the world was divided into 3, the awakened hegemon of Yongzhou in the east, the terrifying existence of He State in the west, and the ancient expert of Shan State in the south, had begun to send followers to attack cities and seize land. The 3 factions were contending for hegemony, and they wanted to unify the Yang realm. Many people gathered around the stone Buddha. Even the youth from the Golden Crow race walked over to greet him with great reverence. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. This was choosing a side. The Golden Crow race was considered neutral before and didn't lean towards anyone, but now they were walking together with the people of the Buddhist race. This meant that they were going to support that terrifying evolver of He State in the West. King Dari has officially made a decision. This is a major event. Someone sighed. King Dari of the Golden Crow race was a powerful leader of his generation. He was ranked 3rd among the celestial venerables, and his strength shook the Yang realm. Who dared to not obey him? It could be said that this 3rd celestial venerable of the Yang realm was extremely powerful. He looked down on the western region and swept through the heavens. In several generations, it was really difficult to find a worthy opponent. Not to mention the overall strength of the race, King Dari alone was enough to make the Golden Crow race famous in the Yang realm. That was because even the celestial venerables of the top 5 clans couldn't compare to King Dari. The 3rd in the world, who dared to go against him in a battle of the same level. At the same time, it wasn't that the Golden Crow race didn't have any old powerhouses. If anyone dared to come out and fight to the death with the Golden Crow race, the ancestor of King Dari would definitely take action. In fact, in the current world, 90% of the powerhouses were dying. At that level, their lifespan was not enough. They usually went into seclusion to seal their vitality and nourish their blood. No one dared to act rashly. In the entire Yang realm, it could be said that the celestial venerables had become the main characters and had the power to act. Of course, this was also relatively speaking. Among the celestial venerables, there were also as many as 60% who didn't have much lifespan left and were on the verge of death. This was the current general situation and environment. After evolving to a certain level, many people stopped moving forward. They were suffering for years and going into seclusion to find a way to break free from the hellish swamp and fight for their lives. The Gu race had also come, and as expected, they walked together with them. People had long heard that the Gu race was very close to the Buddhist race, and they were even willing to be the mounts of some bodhisattvas and true Buddhas. In the Yang realm, those who dared to call themselves bodhisattvas and Buddhas were definitely extremely transcendent existences, far from the Buddhas of the lesser netherworld. It was just like how an evolver at the Illuminator realm could illuminate the heavens in the lesser Yin realm. In the Yang realm, only the celestial venerables dared to build temples in various places and let the creatures of the various races in the world worship them. A top-notch celestial venerables could illuminate the vast territory of the Yang realm and manifest themselves everywhere. An old Swani with black and gold fur accompanied the stone Buddha with a smile. Next, people saw that the peacock lineage, a powerful race in the Yang realm, had also walked over to the stone Buddha. This made people astonished again. The peacock race was not an ordinary race. Their race's white peacock was ranked first under the heavens when he was at the God-King realm. After he ascended to the Empyrean realm, he was ranked 15th under the heavens in a short period of time. This kind of achievement, this kind of speed, suppressed the various Empyreans to the point that they couldn't breathe. It can't be right? The white tiger race also went over. This is making their stand clear. For a moment, people were dumbfounded. This was a powerful beast race that dared to fight with the dragon race. Although the number of pure-blooded clansmen was extremely small and there were only single digits in every generation, once they started fighting, they dared to slay dragons. The young lady from the white tiger race looked gentle and beautiful, but once she furrowed her brows, the corners of her eyes and brows would look slightly evil. She was dressed in white as she followed the clan elder over to have an audience with the stone Buddha. Everyone felt a little dizzy. Terrifying evolvers were bound to gather around the overlord of the Western He state. From the Buddha race to the Golden Crow race, then to the Peacock race, the Swani race, and the White Tiger race, this was just the tip of the iceberg. Presumably, there would be even more. As expected, dozens of races appeared in the blink of an eye. They were all powerful races that were famous in the Yang realm and stood together with those people. For a moment, the young beauty from the White Tiger race, the young master of the Golden Crow race, the young divine king of the Peacock race, the three sons of Buddha, and the outstanding talent of the Swani race became the center of attention. A group of geniuses from other races appeared around them as though they were stars surrounding the moon. The fairy from the White Tiger race is truly peerless in her generation. She has a celestial appearance and jade bones, someone complimented. The young divine king of the Peacock race is destined to fight his way into the top 5 divine kings this time. The divine king ranking has been delayed again and again. It's about time for a new ranking. Son of Buddha, the young master of the Golden Crow race, I hope we can join forces and fight once we enter the battlefield and dominate the younger generation. Many people came forward to compliment them. The few people who were surrounded in the center also spoke with a smile and contacted other experts. They were destined to enter the battlefield together. It was obvious that all the races were choosing side. The current world was divided into 3 factions, and it was already the most chaotic era. Even the Rock Emperor, Ing Zhixian, and the young lady suspected to be Linoi in the distance had made their own choices. At present, these people were standing outside the battlefield, but they were also surrounded by people. These people were like blazing suns. After joining a faction, they would be given special attention. They were the seeds of the future and many people complimented them. After that, another powerful figure from a faction arrived. It was a guest from the Harmony Prefecture in the east. The person who had revived in the Harmony Prefecture had appeared. His disciple had personally come. Although he was called a disciple, he was actually very old. He was shrouded in chaotic energy and his divine eyes were like lightning. Moreover, he had brought a young man with him. He was extraordinary, especially his pair of eyes. They were truly astonishing. There were golden runes in his eyes that glistened brightly. Fiery eyes of truth. Some people were astonished. This is a disciple I took in after meeting a few old friends when I was roaming the East Victory Divine Continent. The old man smiled. For a moment, everyone was shaken. The fiery eyes of truth could see through all things in the early stages. Once it evolved to the later stages, it would be even more wondrous. It was related to some great secret on the path of evolution. Everyone was shocked and envious of that young man. At this moment, the young lady who looked like Linoy said with a smile, "In prehistoric times, there were records that the later stages of the fiery eyes of truth could help one evolve and seize treasures of heaven and earth. Outsiders don't know the specifics, but this senior brother's Tao bones were naturally formed." At this moment, even the stone Buddha on the opposite side looked over. As for the group of young people, there was no need to talk about it. The three Buddha sons, the beauty from the white tiger race, and the young divine king from the peacock race were also moved as they gazed over. The rock emperor, who was standing in the distance, sighed and said, "It seems that a hero is about to rise with an unstoppable momentum. The surface of his body is shrouded in a halo of the great Tao. This is truly astonishing," Ing Zhixian said softly. Her gaze was deep as she nodded slightly at the young man from the Harmony Prefecture. At this moment, Chu Feng was still choosing an item. When he heard the fiery eyes of truth, he was stunned and couldn't help but raise his head. Comparatively speaking, his place was extremely shabby. It was true that no one showed interest in him. He didn't even have a meteorite, let alone being surrounded by stars. Chapter 1130. This is a spirit egg born from the essence of heaven and earth? Someone asked in astonishment. The people here didn't have the fiery eyes, but some people had the heavenly eye. Meanwhile, some of the older generation's divine senses were even more terrifyingly powerful. They immediately saw some clues. The youth brought by the elder shrouded in primal chaos from Harmony Prefecture was extraordinary. His innate aura was restrained and wasn't tainted by the slightest bit of the mortal world. It could even be said that this was a heavenly embryo. Normally, creatures that were born would be surrounded by the world's turbid energy. However, he had cut off the turbid roots and his body contained innate essence. Yes, he was originally a spirit egg contained within a 9-aperture divine stone from East Victory Divine Continent's Flower Fruit Mountain. He was born 9 years ago and his constitution is indeed extraordinary. The elder from Harmony Prefecture said with a smile. His name was Hao Yuan, and he was the disciple of that Harmony Prefecture overlord. Even his eyes were covered by the primal chaos around his body, becoming hazy. He was very powerful, but his words were even more attractive. Some people were shocked and felt deeply surprised. I know, I also heard about it back then. I heard that a stone embryo appeared and was actually powerful to such a degree. Innate fiery eyes? Many people were moved and looked at the young man beside the elder. He was over 1.9 meters tall and looked quite heroic. His sword-like eyebrows reached his temples and his eyes were full of spirit. He could be considered a handsome man with an oppressive heroic spirit. However, his arms were made of stone, which attracted people's attention. His hands were quite powerful and made people suspect that he could break divine weapons with his bare hands. He is a spirit egg born from heaven and earth. He arrived in this chaotic world and is destined to join the army and fight bloody battles. The elder from Harmony Prefecture, Hao Yuan, said. Everyone was shaken and felt that Harmony Prefecture's side was extraordinary. They could even find this kind of Tao embryo. Could this be the will of the heavens? His name is Great Sky. Hao Yuan spoke the name of the stone embryo. Good name, not bad. Even the usually calm stone Buddha spoke. Even though both sides belonged to different factions, a strange expression appeared in his eyes. In the distance, Chu Feng was startled. He was a bit sensitive to the word great sky because the time furnace's words contained this keyword and mentioned the flames of great sky. Was this a coincidence? This is the name bestowed by the Grandmaster, the elders said with a smile. When they heard this, everyone was visibly moved. His master's ancestor was the overlord of the Harmony province. Back then, he'd once ruled a 20th of the Yang realm's territory, yet he'd perished after suffering a lightning tribulation. Then, he'd revived in the present world and wanted to reform the world. He was a peerless overlord. Chu Feng was moved. He felt that the person from Yongzhou wouldn't casually come up with a name. Could it be that he knew of the flames of Grand Sky? This was a shocking clue. He carefully sized up this great sky that was born from heaven and earth. Truly was extraordinary and extremely astonishing. There was a halo of great Tao on the surface of his body, his flesh body perfectly merging with the stone arm. It wasn't abrupt at all. In fact, other than bestowing the name Big Sky, the overlord of the Harmony Prefecture had once said that when Big Sky shed its stone-like appearance, it would be the time for him to evolve and step onto the right path, gazing at the ultimate path. The stone Buddha spoke again. Although it is in the land of the far west, an old Buddha of my clan had a premonition. Back then, on a whim, he made a divination and discovered that a strange object from beyond the heavens had descended and touched the land of the Dongxing Divine Prefecture. I believe it has something to do with this young man. He was normally a man of few words, but today, he took the initiative to speak in detail. This made everyone feel deeply surprised, and they quickly realized that the Buddha clan must have deduced something or something extraordinary back then. Hao Yuan revealed a smile and said, "Correct. Back then, a strange object descended from the heavens and fused with the stone core, allowing him to be born in advance and become the great sky." What? Heaven and earth resonated, and the strange object fused with the stone core, creating him? The stone Buddha frowned. This was the first time he revealed such an emotional fluctuation. For a moment this place became quiet. Everyone looked towards the great sky. He was very steady as he silently cupped his fists towards everyone. Then, he nodded in greeting. The more Chu Feng listened, the more he felt that something wasn't right. Back then, he caused a great commotion when he escaped from the ultimate land of reincarnation. Was he misunderstood by others? Back then, a strand of natural substance had indeed escaped from the stone jar, but in the end it was absorbed by the stone core? That was the supreme essence from beyond the heavens that created the great sky. Hao Yuan didn't hide anything and revealed that Yongzhou's destiny had returned to him. It was predestined in the dark. Everyone was subdued. The natural substance of heaven and earth, and the strange object from beyond the realm, had all returned to Yongzhou. It seemed to indeed foretell something. There were historical records regarding this kind of phenomenon. That kind of natural substance and strange object from beyond the realm would occasionally appear, and it was indeed like the descent of the mandate of heaven. There were a few examples of this, and it had once created unfathomable characters and imperial dynasties. It was reported that Li Sanlong, Li Su, was once a character with this kind of mandate of heaven. Everyone's expression changed, and even the stone Buddha frowned. Only Chu Feng was stroking his chin there. He was thinking, from a certain point of view, could this stone core be considered his son? The world's essence descended into the Yang realm and entered the nine-aperture immortal stone, creating the great sky's birth. Wasn't this a child he had inadvertently created? Even though this child was already taller than him. Regardless of whether others believed it or not, Chu Feng first acknowledged this in his heart. This was considered his son. I don't care if you guys believe it or not. In any case, I believe it, he muttered. Although he knew that the young man was terrifying, he felt a sense of superiority in his heart. He looked down on him. You're my son. In the distance, a group of people exclaimed in astonishment. Even the Rock Emperor, the Arhat Ingzhishian, and the others went forward to greet the great sky and chat. On Chu Feng's side, apart from the Manchurian tiger who cultivated silent meditation, there was no one else. It was truly a desolate place where the stars revolved around the moon. He no longer paid them any attention and began to seriously choose his items again. "Little brother, have you chosen?" the middle-aged woman urged. Her voice was calm and indifferent. At this time, even the stone Buddha and the younger brother of the Golden Crow races, King Dari, had arrived. They were all looking at the time furnace. This was the main business. "Yes, I'm almost done choosing. I'll consider it one last time." Chu Feng possessed the fiery eyes, but he only used them covertly and didn't expose them. He stared at a heavily worn silver lamp. It was slightly dilapidated, but it gave off an extraordinary feeling. But in the end, he gave up on it and looked at a small spear that was as long as a chopstick. It was dark and swarthy, and it was made of wood. It was very inconspicuous. He weighed it in his hand and found that it was very ordinary. Its quality was similar to that of ordinary wooden chopsticks. He really couldn't see anything special about it. In particular, the tip of the small spear had rotted a little. This made him speechless. He didn't believe it at first, but when he touched it with his hands and used a knife to cut it, he actually dug out some rot. Chu Feng was stunned. He was starting to doubt his own judgment. Although he felt that this thing was strange, he didn't have any strong evidence to support it. He secretly hid a few grains of reincarnation soil in his fingernails. Just now, he felt that these grains were slightly abnormal and slightly hot. That was why he chose this spear. However, the tip of this thing had rotted. How could it be good if it wasn't resistant to rot? Chu Feng had already put the grains of reincarnation soil back into the stone jar. He didn't plan to take it out to test it. After all, there were too many big shots here, and it was somewhat risky. He decided to choose this small wooden spear. At this time, Dakong walked over and looked at the things on the stall. Hao Yuan and the stone Buddha were looking at the time furnace, while Dakong lowered his head to choose other artifacts. That little rogue cultivator chose a wooden spear. Interesting. Ha, did you guys see that? The wooden spear has rotted. What kind of gaze is that? The group of people laughed, and some people came over. However, Dakong's words made those people shut up. "Can you let me take a look at this wooden spear?" "No, I've already chosen it." Chu Feng shook his head. At the same time, he said in his heart, "Eldest son, don't fight with your father. You're a step too late." If Hao Yuan and Dakong knew that he was actually thinking about this, they would definitely beat him to death. "Are you sure you want to choose this?" the middle-aged woman asked. "And this is it." Chu Feng nodded. "Good, we're even." The middle-aged woman agreed happily. "Senior, what's the origin of this wooden spear?" someone asked, thinking that this organization definitely knew about it. The middle-aged woman said, "We've studied it for a long time and threw it in the warehouse for millions of years. However, many famous figures and even leaders have personally tried it, but they didn't feel that it had any special use." Many people laughed when they heard this. Even the seller said so. One could imagine the value of this wooden spear. This might be a primal chaos root. Someone whispered. There were several kinds of primal chaos roots in this world, all of which were priceless. However, they were all rooted in forbidden areas. Outsiders had no fate at all. Let alone digging them up, they couldn't even see them. Impossible. The middle-aged woman shook her head and said, "We once did an experiment and dug out some wood chips from it. In the end, after feeding them to ordinary creatures, there was no abnormal reaction that a primal chaos root should have. It only made a few ordinary creatures have diarrhea for a few days." Everyone was speechless when they heard this. Then they laughed. It was not even as good as pure poison. After our verification, the end of this wooden spear has indeed rotted. Although the wood material is extraordinary, it is not too tough and indestructible. When they heard this, everyone completely lost interest in this object. Even Chu Feng was speechless when he heard this. This damned wooden spear was too disappointing. It made him lose face. What use did it have? Why did it cause the reincarnation soil to heat up? Chu Feng decided that he would properly study it later. Of course, he was not convinced on the surface. He said, "To enter the sky-reaching waterfall, one needs to fish out an old object from inside. I'll choose this. You guys don't understand. This is the object that helped me achieve Tao." The few fairy-like young women couldn't help but laugh out loud. Chapter 1131. Big Sky was more than 9 meters tall with sword-like eyebrows that reached his temples. His eyes were golden, and there were visible runes that emitted a terrifying radiance. He stared at the wooden spear in Chu Feng's hand with great reluctance. However, he didn't say anything in the end. He turned around and went to choose other artifact. Chu Feng cursed in his heart. Could this be the so-called mother-son bond? Did his eldest son also feel the extraordinariness of this spear like him? In reality, even he felt guilty. How could this be his blood and son? Strictly speaking, Big Sky only obtained a wisp of the essence of creation because of him, which caused the heaven and earth to become peaceful and gave birth to the spirit egg in advance. If Hao Yuan and Big Sky knew that there was someone who couldn't forget and wanted to take Big Sky as his son, they would definitely explode in anger and beat Chu Feng to death. "Young man, if I were you, I would definitely be delighted and respectfully offer it to Tao friend Big Sky," someone suddenly said. He was also a young man with long brown hair and a bronze-colored body. He had matured prematurely and looked very valiant. He actually had 3 heads and 6 arms. This was a disciple of a race with an extremely powerful bloodline. Those who could have such an appearance were all gods and devils. Chu Feng didn't even raise his head. He looked at the other artifacts and said, "Because you are indeed not me, you can only be a small star among the stars, or perhaps a large meteorite. I, on the other hand, am destined to become a person like the sun and illuminate the past, present, and future." Hiss! The group of people grinded their teeth. This young wandering cultivator was really in high spirits, conceited, and confident. He had just beaten up Shi Huang, the young master of the Shi clan, and extorted him, causing the Shi clan to vomit blood. Now, he was still so conceited. He was really jumpy. As for Big Sky, he was the personal disciple of the grand disciple of that existence in Yong Prefecture. His true identity was unreachable, and in a sense, he could be considered one of the young masters of Yong Prefecture. Someone said disdainfully, "Heh, this is a little fellow who has never been to the battlefield. He's good at talking now, but when he really goes to the battlefield and sees tens of millions of corpses, he'll probably pee his pants." This was a white-haired young man, but he was already a god with extraordinary strength. Have you experienced something like this before? Otherwise, how can you be so sure? How many times did you pee yourself? Chu Feng cast him a sidelong glance, and then said, "If I go to the battlefield, I will definitely be bestowed the title of king, someone who is going to become an emperor, overlooking the world, becoming an extreme. Comparing yourself to me, isn't that a joke?" Everyone was speechless. This young rogue cultivator was really overconfident. He even dared to say such words? Currently, there were only 3 poles in the world. They were the eastern Yongzhou, the western Hezhou, and the southern Zhanzhou. He wanted to be the 4th pole? If not for the organization that sold the time furnace and Granny Meng's soup promising to protect him, some of the people present would have long since made a move to kill him. Chu Feng did not feel any pressure at all. After leaving this place, who would know who? Anyway, no one would know him now. Disperse, disperse. Everyone, make your preparations. We're about to enter the sky-piercing waterfall and become an Empyrean in one night. We'll meet again later and discuss the Tao again. Chu Feng waved his hand, looking like an old man who was proud of his age. The crowd had different expressions. Some were grinding their teeth, some were astounded, and some were mocking him. Little brother, have you been tricked? Don't you know what kind of place the sky-piercing immortal waterfall is? Asked the woman who sold the time furnace. Chu Feng sensed that something was not right when he saw her expression. He held the sky-gold sarcophagus in his sleeve and asked, "Old Gu, are you trying to trick me?" At the same time, he asked the middle-aged woman humbly, "What's going on here?" The middle-aged woman said, "Becoming a Empyrean in one night is just a rumor. It's just a beautiful legend in the world. The terror and bloodshed during the process isn't beautiful at all." Damn it! Chu Feng immediately had the urge to smack the palm-sized sarcophagus. He must have been tricked by old Gu. This furnace isn't bad. It's fated with my tribe, the stone Buddha in the distance said. He was touching the time furnace reluctantly. The eyes of Hao Yuan from the Harmony Prefecture flickered. He believed that as long as he brought the furnace back to the Harmony Prefecture, his grandmaster, the peerless ruler, would be able to comprehend it. That organization had once comprehended the mysteries of various scriptures from the furnace, and in the end, they had created the world-shaking 10th technique, Hell's Return. How shocking was that? Especially since the leader of the organization had yet to explore the deepest part of the time furnace, which implied that there were even more shocking treasures and the truth. Suddenly, a cold laugh came from the distance, which led to a commotion and chaos. The reason was that one of the strongest clans in the world, the Hung clan, had appeared. Clouds and mist rolled in that area, and a beam of eternal light spread out from an extremely distant place. An old man, who seemed to have existed for eternity, suddenly appeared in that place. The old man of the Hung clan had arrived. This was a clan that was not afraid of the Buddha race, a clan that was not weak at all. When the old man looked at the stone Buddha, he was incomparably domineering. His gaze was sharp, and his voice was as loud as a golden bell. Fated with the Buddha race? What a joke! Stone Buddha, do you want to have a match? Brother Hing Tuo must be joking. There's no need for that today. The stone Buddha firmly refused. One could see how powerful the Hung clan's old man was. Even the stone Buddha, who was second only to the future Buddha master, was so tyrannical that he wanted to attack. After the Hung clan appeared, the Rock Emperor immediately walked over. He represented the extremely powerful rock race. Although he was a wandering cultivator, the rock race had long since viewed him as a core genius after he became famous. Moreover, the quasi-immortal race thought very highly of him and had once provided him with the strongest pollen. In the field of evolution, the choice of pollen was very important. The Black Blood Journal, one of the 4 most authoritative evolution journals in the Yang realm, had once published a research article explaining that the growth trajectories of the most powerful people in history were closely related to the pollen they used. The quasi-immortal race had long since taken a fancy to the Rock Emperor and had been taking care of him. Now that the Rock Emperor had gone over, some people from the quasi-immortal race also followed him. For example, Ing Wudi, Ing Zhixian, and their core disciples. The rock race and the quasi-immortal race were too famous in the Yang realm. Standing together with the Hung clan made people tremble in fear. They stood on the southern side of the Zhan prefecture and supported the rising overlord there. Hao Yuan opened his mouth and said, "Almost everyone who should come is here. Let's discuss how to bid and buy this furnace." He signaled to the stone Buddha and Hing Tuo. A total of nearly 10 unfathomable elders walked together and confronted each other while discussing in secret. Chu Feng pondered. This time furnace was not fated with him. It was impossible for him to compete with those people. If it really fell into his hands, he reckoned that even this organization wouldn't be able to protect him. It's almost time. Those who want to enter the sky-piercing waterfall should make plans early, someone reminded him. Chu Feng sighed and was reluctant to leave. He looked back 3 times with every step he took as he walked toward the waterfall. However, his gaze would fall on the time furnace behind him from time to time. Some people were speechless. You're just a small wild cultivator, yet you dare to covet this kind of heavenly treasure? Aren't you dreaming? Many people, including Big Sky, Linoy, the Rock Emperor, Ing Zhexian, and the others, arrived in front of the waterfall. A large group of people, ranging from youths to adults, all wanted to enter the waterfall. Everyone, please look clearly at this stone wall. Once you appear, you're destined to be killed without mercy. Someone shouted, reminding everyone. In front of the waterfall, there was a stone wall covered in mist. Now, it had been forcefully dispersed by someone, revealing a rough stone body. There were words written on it, and they were written in silver and iron. Chu Feng drew a cold breath. Some terrifying things were recorded on it. The sky-piercing waterfall came from the outer realm and descended here. The source had yet to be found. All the people who went to explore never returned. It's just a universe outside the outer realm. How can it stop celestial venerables and mighty figures? Chu Feng didn't believe in heresy. Someone sneered. What do you think the so-called outer realm is? The starry sky can't stop it, and the universe can't confine it. But what about time and that astonishing world membrane? Chu Feng felt that he knew too little and shouldn't speak too much. Otherwise, it would only make him seem too unfamiliar with the Yang realm and make others suspect that there was something wrong with him. He stared at the stone wall as his heart churned violently. There was indeed someone who became a celestial venerable overnight. Moreover, it was a small cultivator who rushed into the sky overnight. There was even someone who became a mighty figure immediately and shocked the Yang realm. However, this wasn't a good thing. After such a person came out, his temperament changed greatly. It was as if he became a different person. The various races speculated that this was caused by an evil spirit possessing his body. There was an evil spirit in this sky-piercing waterfall? Chu Feng almost cursed old Gu to death. This old bastard who deceived his father. There were records from prehistoric times that the indescribable creatures that walked out of this sky-piercing waterfall were very terrifying. They had once bathed the world in blood and caused a catastrophe, causing panic in the Yang realm for several eras. Of course, the so-called walking out referred to the creatures that were possessed by the evil spirit and replaced the original owner. Their strength was terrifying beyond compare. Back then, in order to encircle and annihilate this kind of creature, many experts died. Celestial venerables shed blood and mighty figures turned into corpses. Now that he thought about it, there were still 3 to 5 creatures that hadn't been annihilated and escaped into a few forbidden land. The people of the outside world could only sigh and not dare to fight their way in. Chu Feng looked carefully. This kind of terrifying creature had appeared several times. When the whole world tried to annihilate it, the earth had once flowed with blood and the Yang realm was covered in gloomy clouds. That era was extremely terrifying. Old Gu, you grandson actually dared to deceive me. Chu Feng was dissatisfied as he tossed and turned the sky gold sarcophagus in his sleeve. Cough, I left in too much of a hurry at that time, so I didn't have the time to explain things to you clearly. Old Gu laughed dryly and coughed continuously. Chu Feng still wanted to trample him to death. If he wasn't afraid of some old monsters here, such as the Stone Buddha, Hao Yuan, and Hung Tuo, he really wanted to take out the sky blood starry sky gold dagger and chop this sarcophagus. What kind of place was this? Occasionally, some special creatures would escape, but they could trigger a catastrophe in the Yang realm. The people would be plunged into misery and suffering, and even the founder of a sect would be killed without any power to resist. What kind of land of fortune was this? This kind of place was simply too terrifying. Once an accident occurred, it meant that the bloodiest and darkest era had arrived. It was simply the source of some kind of catastrophe in the Yang realm. Chu Feng secretly asked, "Tell me, what kind of place is this? Did your big brother not leak anything?" "He didn't say anything, but I know that he had obtained great benefits from this place many times," Old Gu replied. Then, he sensed Chu Feng's dissatisfaction and said, "Think about it, this place is called the Heavenly Immortal Waterfall, and there's the word immortal in it. I think it's related to creatures like immortals." Chu Feng was stunned, and his heart palpitated. The ancient evil spirits were suspected to be related to the celestial race. He stared at the stone wall and learned that the biggest benefit of coming here was that it was relatively easy to break through. At the same time, it was even more shocking that it could temper the spirit and body, laying an astonishingly strong foundation. According to records, the growth trajectory of the strongest group of people in history couldn't avoid this place. Some people had once refined the publicly recognized strongest Tao fruit at certain stages. Chu Feng pondered that he could refine the strongest golden body here, and at the same time, could he also secretly temper the Tao fruit of his previous life? That was the Tao fruit of the divine king level. When he thought of this, his heart burned with incomparable anticipation. If he really succeeded, his strength would skyrocket, and his sense of security would greatly increase. Moreover, what if he used the foundation of the divine king domain to break through here and become a celestial lord? Of course, this was most likely difficult to achieve. After all, the Tao fruit of his previous life wasn't much in the Yang realm, and there were all kinds of flaws. However, one should always have a dream. What if it was about to come true? This waterfall has a trace of blood color. It's about time. Everyone, get ready. We're about to enter at any time. Someone reminded. The waterfall that was originally brilliant now had a smear of dark red, as if it was stained with blood. Some people knew that time was up. Big Kong, you have the fiery eyes and were born from the resonance of heaven and earth. It can be said that you have the mandate of heaven. This time, I want you to refine the strongest golden body in history. In the distance, Hao Yuan spoke. His expression was indifferent, but his words were unquestionable. At the same time, he warned some people that Big Kong had a trace of his grandmaster's imprint on him. If anyone dared to secretly attack him, don't blame him for not warning them. The strongest golden body? Apart from my Heng clan, who dares claim to be #1 in the world? Heng Tuo spoke rather conceitedly. He had confidence. The stone Buddha was rather calm. He only put his palms together and chanted an ancient scripture because he didn't need to say much. Everyone in the world knew that the golden body of the Buddhist clan shocked the world. There were rumors of an unbreakable body in every generation. Everyone, stop fighting. There's always someone better out there. This has been the case in every generation. Someone tried to smooth things over. Is that so? I want to see who can transcend above. At this time, some people began to walk together in groups outside the waterfall. There were great benefits in seclusion with powerful and correct people in the sky-piercing waterfall. Of course, it was best if they were in the same realm. In this way, the runes that diffused when the other party comprehended the Tao could benefit those in the same realm around them. At this time, Ying Zhixian walked together with the core descendant of the Heng clan. They were at the same evolutionary level. The Rock Emperor and the young divine king of the Peacock clan glanced at each other and fought shoulder to shoulder. Although they were from different camps, it wasn't bad to form a temporary alliance. After all, it was said that the two clans were close relatives. There would be many benefits if they were to seclude together. For a moment, the young master of the Heng clan, Big Sky, the geniuses of the alien desolate race, the Rock Emperor, the young Golden Crow, and the White Tiger clan's beauty were surrounded by people and became the focus of attention. Chu Feng's place was too deserted. Apart from the donkey spirit, which was the Manchurian tiger, there was no one else. Some people revealed faint smiles. Although they didn't ridicule him, their expressions were self-evident. They were watching him make a fool of himself. Chu Feng's face was as tough as a mountain. He said, "Is there anyone coming over? I'll protect you all. I'll naturally cultivate the strongest body in history, and you can fight for the second strongest body by following me." In an instant, many people laughed. They didn't conceal their ridicule, and the corners of their eyes and brows were full of disdain. "It'll only take one night to prove it. Don't regret it when the time comes." Chu Feng was indifferent. Then, he decisively shouted at the middle-aged woman who was selling the time furnace, "How about I sell you a spot? You can choose one person to follow me." "No." The middle-aged woman decisively refused. Everyone roared with laughter. "Then what are you waiting for? Send someone to protect me. Your organization promised," shouted Chu Feng. Everyone was speechless at first, but many people laughed out loud. Chapter 1132. Kill him in a bit, Shi Huang said in a low voice, instructing some people from the Shi family. "No, we can't provoke that organization," a deity warned solemnly. In reality, the divine king of the clan was present. He also shook his head slightly, indicating that he shouldn't act rashly and that he had to think of another way. "Unless we invite the Heng race or the Dao race, one of the top-ranked races, we won't have to fear this organization. Otherwise, it will be very troublesome," the Shi family's divine king warned. "Got it, we'll find the evolvers of the foreign wasteland race and promise them benefits." Shi Huang's eyes lit up. The foreign wasteland race was a collective name for a series of races. Their bloodlines had already surpassed divine beasts and birds, and could be said to be extremely powerful. Even the strongest Buddha race and Heng race had to be wary of them. If there was anyone who didn't fear the top-ranked races like the Heng race, Li race, Dao race, and Buddha race, it would undoubtedly be the foreign wasteland race. Within this race, there were those who had separated from the other races. For example, the mechanical Buddha race had once been a supreme great Buddha. And within the foreign wasteland race, humans were the most numerous in terms of bloodline origins. Back then, the human race rose up and evolved into an existence with an ultimate bloodline, possessing a terrifying bloodline that could be passed on to their descendants. A few supreme experts broke away from the human race and established their own race. For example, some of the foreign wasteland humans had mysterious yellow blood, possessing the power to split the heavens and shake the Yang realm. Just based on bloodline alone, they had almost reached the peak. There were also foreign wasteland humans with heavenly bones that could defeat all other races. Their bones were peerless and indestructible, their battle prowess world-shaking. There were also foreign wasteland humans who had inherited unrivaled divine abilities, such as the all-seeing eye. They could quickly master any technique they saw and use it to steal all the secret texts in the world. "Oh, that little wild cultivator seems to be a human. 2 foreign wasteland tribes came today, and one of them is a foreign wasteland human. I'll go find them," Shi Huang said coldly. He firmly believed that once the foreign wasteland humans appeared, that wild cultivator would definitely be finished and wouldn't have a good ending. This was because the foreign wasteland humans had the strongest bloodline among the human race, and they could be called human kings. With this bloodline, the foreign wasteland humans had developed the so-called human king domain through continuous evolution. They could specifically suppress ordinary humans. This was also the reason why they left the human race and called themselves a race. They felt that they were transcendental and powerful enough. Of course, there were also people with this kind of bloodline among the human race, and they didn't deny that they were not human. However, it was a pity that due to insufficient protection of the bloodline, the descendants of such people gradually disappeared or were lost in the vast sea of people, and their bloodline was constantly diluted. Shi Huang found his target. It was a red-haired youth with a vertical eye in the center of his brows. According to Sher Clan's Godking's guess, this was at least the heaven's eyes peeping art eye. It was more likely to be the all-seeing eye. If he had a discerning eye, he could steal all the secret manuals in the world. Beside the red-haired youth was another youth. Just like him, he had a full head of red hair, and his eyes were wild and unruly. Sher Huang walked over, his heart beating like a drum. Any powerful race would feel some fear when facing a foreign race, because they were simply too powerful. What made the orthodoxies in the Yang realm rejoice was that the foreign races weren't unified. They had their own mountains, and even if they were all from the human race, they were still independent from one another. Among the foreign races, there was the mechanical Buddha race, the Xianwang human race, and the Tao race with the 9-colored bone marrow. Each and every one of them was terrifyingly powerful. If they joined forces and released the same voice, they would be above the heavens and no one could match them. Fortunately, they didn't say that they didn't interact with each other, but they were all arrogant and rarely walked together. Sher Huang walked over and spoke in a low voice. In the end, the Sher Clan's God King also appeared and made a promise to let the red-haired youth get rid of Chu Feng in the waterfall. It's a small matter. I'm a human from the foreign races. After that little wild cultivator sees me and touches my human monarch domain, he will directly tremble and kowtow. The younger red-haired youth smiled faintly. He was satisfied with the Sher Clan's payment and told them that this matter was easy. Hee, I'll wait for the good news. Rumble. Not long after, the sky-reaching waterfall erupted with an astonishing sound of thunder. This brilliant waterfall directly turned blood-red like blood water. Time's up, someone shouted. Only when it turned into a blood waterfall was it good fortune. When it appeared, a group of people fought to be the first to enter the grand waterfall. At this time, regardless of whether it was the ethereal girl suspected to be Linoy, the white tiger race's peerless beauty, or the pure and holy Buddha son, none of them looked down on the blood waterfall and immediately rushed in. Chu Feng was no exception. He called the donkey spirit to follow him and rushed into the waterfall. It was indeed a bit strange. This waterfall looked scarlet and frightening, but the inside was dazzling and multicolored. It was as if they had entered an underwater dragon palace. What situation was this? Chu Feng was deeply astonished. I'm suffocating. Can we talk here? The Manchurian tiger shouted. He had always listened to Chu Feng's warning and didn't dare to speak carelessly outside. Now that he was inside, he couldn't hold it in anymore. His donkey eyes looked around and found everything strange. Chu Feng was also surprised. After entering, he completely understood how astonishing this sky-reaching waterfall was. It was filled with rich energy and was of a very high level. With so much falling from the sky, it was like the Milky Way pouring down. It was magnificent and magnificent. It had never stopped since ancient times. How much essence had been injected into the Yang realm? He had already noticed that after the waterfall landed, other than the pool in front of him and the very short river that was only a few kilometers long, it didn't flow far. This was directly entering the ground and being absorbed by the underground ancestral vein, leading to various parts of the Yang realm. This was equivalent to constantly replenishing energy for the Yang realm. It was no wonder that the spiritual energy in the Yang realm was dense, and that the vast territory was filled with cultivators at the Sage realm. After everyone entered, they chose a favorable position. The experts rushed up, such as celestial venerables. Such creatures actually appeared and wanted to break through here. As for god monarchs, there was a group of them, and they were all famous people who shook the world. For example, Emperor Rock, the young god monarch of the peacock race, Buddha Sun, a youth from the Heng race, a red-haired youth from the alien desolate race, a peerless beauty from the white tiger race, etc. There were some slightly younger creatures below them. They were a group of gods. After them were evolvers of even lower levels, including saints and people at the Golden Body realm. Chu Feng raised his head and glanced over. Ing Zhixian was together with a young core disciple from the Heng race and a few others above the waterfall. Meanwhile, De Kong, Shi Huang, the youth from the Golden Crow race, the girl who looked like Linoy, the red-haired youth from the Alien Desolate race, and a large group of people were below. They were practically at the very bottom. This naturally included Chu Feng, who was also in the Golden Body domain. Among them, he also saw Zhong Xiu, the core disciple of the extreme martial lineage, and a few of the younger brothers of his old friends who were opportunistically suppressed by him in the desolate border dragon nest. Chu Feng didn't pay attention to them. He found a place with the donkey spirit and sat down in peace. This waterfall was too magnificent, so there was no need to worry about crowding. The place was large enough, but those people gathered in groups of 3 to 5 to comprehend together. Needless to say, Chu Feng's place was the coldest. He endured the impact of the shocking waterfall and comprehended the Tao inside. It's a little strange. The interior of this blood waterfall is sparkling and translucent. It actually contains all kinds of rune fragments. No wonder they want to break through here. Chu Feng immediately realized the beauty of this place. During this time, he once put his finger into the stone jar and washed away the terrifying black fingerprints on it. At the same time, he also heard the terrifying voice from before. It was still the same words, something about the floating earth of the 4 poles, the 2 firewoods of yin and yang, the fire of the great sky, and so on. After that, Chu Feng held the wooden spear in his hand and meditated here in peace. Yes, it's really special. He was surprised. No wonder it was said that cultivating here would yield twice the results with half the effort if one held the object fished out from the waterfall. It really was so. Chu Feng held the small wooden spear that was the length of a chopstick. He discovered that the various runes in the blood waterfall were surging over at an exponential speed and surrounding him. It didn't take long before his entire body was glowing. His body seemed to be cast from gold. This was the embodiment of the golden body being nourished and tempered. This thing reacted with the reincarnation soil before. Let's give it a try. Chu Feng carefully put the wooden spear into the stone jar and inserted it into the reincarnation soil. He discovered to his surprise that the wooden spear in the jar was different. It emitted a dazzling light and the spearhead was frighteningly sharp. It was overflowing with killing intent. He hurriedly took out the wooden spear, afraid that it would cause a commotion. He didn't know why, but this wooden spear actually seemed to be being refined when it was inserted into the stone jar. It emitted a fierce killing intent. He was afraid of alarming the others. Fortunately, the stone jar was unfathomable. It suppressed everything inside and didn't let its aura leak out. Afterwards, Chu Feng cultivated in peace. He held the wooden spear and guided all kinds of beneficial substances in the blood waterfall. His spirit and body experienced an indescribable wonder. Hey, you do have some skill. You've cultivated a pretty good golden body at such a young age. At this time, a voice rang out. A red-haired youth appeared not far from Chu Feng. He seemed to be only about 12 years old. Who are you? What's the matter? Chu Feng asked. Everyone was in seclusion, comprehending, cultivating, and tempering themselves. Yet this youth approached him with a lack of goodwill. You are a human, and according to the agreement of the past, with the bloodline passed down from your ancestors, I am your king. Seeing me is like seeing the king of humanity. You should kowtow. The red-haired youth had a faint smile on his face as he stared at Chu Feng. Chu Feng's eyes were cold. Where did this youth come from? He dared to make him kowtow and call himself the king of humanity. One had to know that he was a human king himself. He had awakened a certain bloodline in the lesser Yin world. I'm a human. What race are you? Chu Feng asked. The foreign races have transcended the human race, the red-haired youth said proudly. Why do I feel like you're a human? Chu Feng asked again. Human race? Heh, my race has already transcended and is high and mighty. We are no longer the human race. The red-haired youth's eyes flickered and his aura was powerful and intimidating. Following that, he said in a low voice, You are a human. Seeing me is like seeing the king of humanity. Why aren't you kowtowing? Do you really want to wait for me to release my king domain? Chapter 1133. Ha! The red-haired youth laughed heartily, his face full of contempt. In his opinion, this target of his didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. How dare he boast so shamelessly? In the history of evolution, who didn't know how terrifying the foreign races were? Because their bloodlines were too powerful and intimidated the world, they established themselves as a race that naturally restrained ordinary humans. The red-haired youth, Mo Feng, looked at him disdainfully and said, Where did this wild cultivator come from? How dare a stray chicken or a stray dog talk about a human monarch? Kneel. A layer of purplish-red halo appeared outside his body. It was a terrifying scene as soon as it appeared, bringing with it a special charm. Then, an aura that seemed to have crossed over from the prehistoric times spread out. It was grand and ancient, majestic and intimidating. Within the halo, the figure of the figure was indistinct, but one could roughly see that it was suppressing the human soul. Within the halo, an existence that seemed to be a human monarch stood in the sky with his hands clasped behind his back, overlooking the mortal world. Below him, billions of creatures were kowtowing and prostrating themselves in worship. Moreover, all kinds of sounds could be heard. Billions of creatures were chanting the human monarch and praying devoutly. After the ceremony, the oath is established. My race will be a human monarch branch. Below the figure standing high in the sky, a humanoid creature shouted. For a moment, as if some kind of agreement had been reached, the countless human evolvers kowtowed again. For a moment, Chu Feng's scalp tightened, and even his soul began to throb. He felt a pressure that transcended the river of time, as if it was crushing down from the prehistoric times. Was this a kind of oath to respect the human monarch? The ancestor of this red-haired youth was truly extraordinary. Had he once protected the human race, or had he suppressed the great wilderness and commanded the entire world of the living? Chu Feng was quite shocked. The so-called human monarch domain released by the other party contained too much information. It was passed down from the most ancient times. Who was the enemy of the human race at that time? What kind of dark calamity had befallen the world of the living in that era? Rumble! A supreme aura spread out from the human monarch domain, as if it was specifically targeted at ordinary humans. It commanded the entire world to obey the agreement. Seeing me is like seeing the human monarch. Hurry up and kowtow! Shouted Mo Feng. His eyes shone with a demonic light. His red hair danced in the wind as he looked down at Chu Feng. Chu Feng did feel an indescribable sense of urgency. It was the intimidating pressure brought by the various scenes of the past that were reflected in the purple-red halo. However, he was not afraid. He had already reached this stage and was already standing in the field of the golden body. How could he kneel to someone at the same evolutionary level? Moreover, he also had transcendent blood in his body. When he was in the small Een realm, it was said that he had the bloodline of a human monarch, but he didn't know if that was true. Rumble! He didn't even need to deliberately resist it. The originally bright red blood in his body suddenly turned blue. It was bright and translucent, the blue sparkling and intoxicating. For a moment, all the pressure around his body disappeared. That so-called human king domain was repelled by the blue light he released. The donkey spirit had long retreated to a distance behind him. He was alarmed and didn't dare approach. Huh! Wind Void was shocked. How could there be someone who could take it head-on? One had to know that once their race came into being, they could suppress the human race everywhere. It was as if they were innately restrained and had to abide by some rules contained in the human king domain. Today, he had encountered a wild cultivator, a youth who was clearly a human, but he actually failed. "Kneel!" shouted Wind Void. "You're crazy, but I'm not. Who the hell do you think you are? You should just kneel." Chu Feng had already soared up and arrived at a relatively high place. He was at the same level as the donkey spirit. The blue blood in his body surged and an ancient aura actually appeared in his blood. It formed an awe-inspiring and inviolable glimmer and diffused outwards. A layer of mysterious halo mixed with blood energy covered the surface of his body. After being illuminated by all kinds of rune fragments in the blood waterfall, it appeared multicolored and couldn't be seen through his body. There seemed to be a layer of mysterious clothes-fitting battle clothes on Chu Feng's body. The runes that belonged to a supreme human monarch who had disappeared in the passage of time interweaved, setting him off like an aloof and unsurpassable monument. Rumble! Wind Void didn't dare to tarry. He felt that the situation wasn't good. When Chu Feng soared up, he had already activated the purple-red halo around his body and added it to the human king domain. The various blurry figures and the ancient voice inside became increasingly clear, intimidating the human race youth in front of him. But this time, it was even more disadvantageous for him. The youth in front of him released a multicolored brilliance. With a boom, a corner of the human king domain was actually shattered. This made Wind Void's heart go cold. He dares to compete with a human king bloodline? He was a bit scared. He knew that no race dared to say that they were the absolute number one under the heavens. There would always be natural enemies that they could compete with. The human king domain was the same. Not all humans were afraid of it. There were some who mutated. Not to mention spiritual willpower and strength, their bloodline alone could almost contend against them. Of course, the most extreme case was if they encountered a human king hidden among ordinary people. Then the situation would be even worse. If the bloodline was stronger than his, then it would be extremely dangerous. They were the bane of their race. Rumble! The vertical eye between Wind Void's brows opened. Although it hadn't evolved to the level of the all-seeing eye and couldn't steal all the secret tomes in the world and control the enemy's life or death, it still had an offensive power that could intimidate evolvers at the same level. A purple-red beam of light flew out from his vertical eye. It was like a bolt of lightning as it blasted toward Chu Feng. What could be faster than this deadly lightning? It was within 30 meters, and it would be very difficult to evade. Golden symbols flashed in Chu Feng's eyes. After being supported by the blue blood halo, they turned blue-gold, beautiful and astonishing. With a boom, he smashed the purple-red light and turned it into specks of energy. All of this happened in the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint. From the time the two spoke to the time they attacked, it was too fast. Chu Feng stepped forward like a bolt of lightning. He prepared to swing his fist and use the fist imprint he had comprehended from the so-called ultimate scripture he had obtained from the ancient dream path. However, as he approached, something strange happened. The blue blood in his body boiled because he had entered deep into the other party's domain. It was as if it had been stimulated. A muffled rumble rang out as if the sky was being split open. The blood outside Chu Feng's body surged and collided intensely with the purple-red human king domain. "It's really the human king's blood?" The red-haired youth was shocked and completely terrified. He had never thought he would encounter such a prey today. How could he hunt like this? When two kings met, one was bound to be injured. In particular, he felt that his human king's blood was actually at a slight disadvantage and was being suppressed. Even his domain was growing dim. "How is this possible? You're just a wild cultivator. You..." His expression suddenly changed. Could it be that this was a core youth from one of the other human tribes in the foreign wasteland? Could it be that he was actually a human king with a great foundation? In an instant, his state of mind was in chaos. However, after thinking about it carefully, the other party shouldn't be. According to the elders of his race, it didn't match. Although those races were exceptionally powerful, they had nothing to do with the youth before him. It's not mysterious yellow blood or heavenly bone. Who exactly are you? He was overwhelmed with shock. This was a completely new human king. He immediately understood. The ominous premonition he had before had come true. This was a branch with human king's blood lying dormant among ordinary humans. Didn't they say that this kind of race had disappeared? They were obliterated over the years and their bloodline was continuously diluted until it was finally severed. That's right, there's a sudden change. A new human king has been born among the ordinary humans. The red-haired youth Emofeng understood what was going on. He reacted quickly. This was all a thought between his brows and a flash of light in his eyes. He didn't stop moving and fiercely resisted during this process. Chu Feng broke through the human king domain, but it was ineffective against him. He directly closed in and raised his fist to attack. After using this fist technique, not only was there blue light on the surface of Chu Feng's body, but there was also the resplendent golden light of the fist imprint. His entire body seemed to be cast from gold with a bit of blue. In addition, this fist technique also had a layer of dark red bloodlight. This formed an indescribable brilliance that blended together. It was extremely mysterious. Emofeng was overwhelmed with shock. The human king domain had failed. This was quite terrifying. He suffered a certain backlash. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, and his soul was trembling. How was this possible? This was a trump card researched by the ancestors of his race. It involved prehistoric O's and a mysterious great Tao fragment that was activated from within his blood. This was where his confidence came from. Even if he encountered a new human king, he wouldn't be afraid. After all, the other party only had a powerful bloodline and didn't possess the human king domain that had been researched by past human kings. There was indeed no special halo around Chu Feng's body, but he broke through it with pure power. He didn't fear the other party's domain. The blue blood hadn't formed a domain, but it was still terrifying. Emofeng's entire body shone. Even his ears, nose, and mouth were gushing with divine radiance. Rainbows shot out from his 7 apertures. He was doing everything he could to use all kinds of secret techniques to kill Chu Feng. His hair stood on end when someone was so close to him. He wanted nothing more than to use all of his trump cards and immediately kill this person. However, he failed. In this intense battle, he had lost the initiative. One wrong step led to many wrong steps. The most important thing was the backlash of the human king domain. The domain suppressed him instead. After being attacked by Chu Feng's blood qi, it collapsed continuously and then rolled back into Emofeng's body. Emofeng coughed up a large mouthful of blood. His eyes were wide open. He was terrified inside. It wasn't that he was defeated, not that he couldn't defeat the other party, but that he had fallen into the swamp of death that he had laid out himself. Their branches' kings had researched the human king domain and were high and mighty. But now it was used on him. This was a prehistoric agreement and rule. Ah, he roared. His entire body was covered in blood, and his 7 apertures were filled with reddish-purple liquid. The most terrifying thing was that there was a kind of suppression that originated from his spirit. An indescribable fear made him unable to stand. In the end, his legs went soft and he was about to kneel down. This was the most powerful backlash. He had originally suppressed others from prostrating themselves in worship, but now the situation was completely reversed. No. He struggled with all of his strength. However, he was completely powerless to resist Chu Feng's fist. This was because he couldn't use it even if he had the strength. Even if he had heaven-reaching methods, he had long since fallen into his own trap. Bang! He flew out horizontally. Then, he could no longer support himself. His body trembled and his knees went soft. He lowered his head and knelt down uncontrollably. In the distance, the people didn't know what was happening here. Because there was a bloody waterfall in the way and dense mist rising, it effectively cut off the probing of divine will. However, everyone knew that Mo Feng had entered that area to cause trouble for Chu Feng. Many people guessed that the wandering cultivator youth was in great trouble. After all, he was a human. When faced with the pressure from the human race and the suppression of a human king bloodline possessor, he was innately defeated. The Mo clan was a clan that was known as a king among humans. However, what was happening was clearly beyond their expectations and imagination. The battle had stopped. The occasional sound of thunder and glaring light had all dimmed. The truth has been revealed. Who's going to take a look? Someone asked. At this moment, whether it was Ing Zhixian, the Hung clan young master, or the young Golden Crow, everyone felt that there was no longer any suspense. Shi Huang wore a smile on his face. He was a bit reserved and didn't say anything. After all, he had made a fool of himself before and didn't want to show too much enthusiasm now. However, his expression was enough to explain everything. Beside him, the evolver that followed him immediately spoke on his behalf. With the appearance of the human race from the foreign wilderness, is there any suspense left? That wild cultivator is only a pitiful prey that has already been hunted. Hee. Shi Huang still didn't say anything, but he was laughing. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.